Hello, hello! How are you guys doing? Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining me from. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and we've got a whole slew of topics to go through. So, I think we'll start. Initially, I'm not gonna lie, Henry Kissinger is the man I wanted on the piñata. The piñata referring to, I promised you guys when we hit 1,000 supporters on Patreon that I would build it, or I would get a piñata, and we would vote in the comment section on who it should be. And I was gonna vote for Henry Kissinger. So I'm afraid we're gonna have to start with him. We've got people tuning in here now from Puerto Rico, from Canada, from the UK, from Russia, from Iran, Portugal, Russia again, California, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Germany, Russia, from the Knesset, from France, from Spain, from Sweden, from Arizona, from Bundland, which is Germany near Frankfurt. Thanks for specifying. I appreciate that. Danke. We've got New York City, we've got Germany, we've got Finland, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Georgia. Beautiful. I saw an interesting statement. I think it was from Georgia's prime minister earlier, which we can look at if you want. In any case, before I continue, make sure you've hit the like button or the thing that looks like a thumbs up. It helps the channel a lot. And we'll get started then. Okay, give me a second. Right. So Henry Kissinger, all right, the guy's just turned 100 years old, and there's been a lot of talk about him in the media, and I'll just start out by saying it's kind of a sad irony that someone who's killed so many people and robbed them of their birthdays, and their time on Earth, gets to celebrate 100. It's a sad irony. I thought we'd go through, I only have so much time, but a short list of Henry Kissinger's accomplishments, right? We'll try and look at what he's most famous for and what people don't talk about also, which they tend to forget, right? So I mean, just in short, Henry. For those of you who don't know, I mean, Henry Kissinger. He's considered by some, I don't know who these people are, maybe Hillary Clinton, to be some kind of like master, geostrategist and an amazing diplomat. He's anything but a diplomat. He's more like a thug who just, kind of betrays people and sticks knives in their backs and then kills hundreds of thousands of people, to put it mildly. So he was former national security advisor, also officially, so he was national security advisor, U.S. Secretary of State, and he's a German Jew who fled Nazi persecution, and he went to the United States. He became a U.S. citizen. He joined the U.S. Army as a lot of people did who fled, and he excelled academically, went to Harvard and so on, and then he ends up in politics, right? He ends up in the Vietnam Paris peace talks, playing a central pivotal role. So the thing is that he sabotaged those peace talks, right? He basically made sure that the war was prolonged. He was personally getting involved in it, to the point that his idea of peace talks was basically bombing Laos and Cambodia. So just to read this to you from the History Channel, right? So look at what they say. So Kissinger was deeply involved in the bombing raids on Cambodia and in keeping them a secret from Congress and the public. According to a Pentagon report released in 1973, quote, Henry Kissinger approved each of the 3,875 Cambodia bombing raids in 1969 and 1970, as well as the methods for keeping them out of the newspapers. Okay, so by the end of the bombing campaign, which was nicknamed Operation Menu, the United States have dropped a total of 110,000 tons of bombs that killed between 150,000 and 500,000 civilians. The Khmer Rouge galvanized anti-American sentiment in a destabilized Cambodia, rising to power and slaughtering 1.7 to 2.2 million Cambodians as part of the Cambodian genocide. I mean, to be honest, anyone could galvanize anti-American sentiment after that crap. But yeah, the Khmer Rouge, extremely brutal and killed millions of people. And that's thanks to Henry Kissinger. So you have the initial crime, and then the indirect consequence of that. Well, it's not very indirect, is it? One thing I would add here is that many Americans, they take issue with this. Primarily, for them, because he kept it, basically out of the newspapers, and he didn't tell Congress, like as if that's the the main crime. Oh my God, he didn't tell Congress. He didn't he didn't follow the system of checks and balances. No, man, the main crime here is killing all of those people. Do you understand? Like, if he had told Congress, would that make it any better? If he had briefed people in the government, would that have made it better that he killed all these people in Cambodia? No. So that's the first thing you mention. And the last thing, after the Khmer Rouge and after killing all of the hundreds of thousands of people, then you say Henry Kissinger also lied to Congress and kept it out of there. Yeah, that's how you do it. Okay, because every goddamn thing you read is that he hid it from Congress. Oh, and by the way, he killed all these people. God, it's a thinking that it's this imperialist thinking, or maybe it's indirect, and it's it's because of the conditioning that has to go through Congress. Congress is everything. Yeah, okay, human life is also comes first. Anyway, let me continue. So, let's pivot from Vietnam to South America, right, to Latin America, because I'm sure many of you have heard of Pinochet, right? So he was basically a Chilean general, and he rose to power thanks to the United States and Henry Kissinger backing him, right? So they installed a dictatorship basically in Chile, because at the time it was the thinking was that if you're against the communists, right, then you're with us, you're on our side, and we'll do whatever it takes to back you. You've got our green light. And hold on, I'm just getting a clip ready to show you. So yeah, in any case, I mean, Pinochet, it's actually interesting with him because afterwards you had this whole concept about universal jurisdiction, and when he was in London, well, that's a whole other conversation. But in any case, Henry Kissinger backed him. If we go to Southeast Asia to talk about Indonesia, I mean, I think Kissinger and the president, they were on their way back to the United States, and they kind of gave their okay for Indonesia to invade East Timor, right? So you had about 200,000 people killed as a result. And again, I say this kind of, I want you to understand something, that I find this kind of ridiculous that the United States okays people like as if you require the United States consent. I mean, it's the invasion and of East Timor by Indonesia is, as I said, it's the primary crime, but it's also this imperialist thinking that, we have to go to Daddy Uncle Sam and get his get his consent before everything. So my point here is that Henry Kissinger is very, very much to the core of his being an American imperialist, right? He's like the personification of Uncle Sam. Okay, he embodies Uncle Sam. He looks different from the caricature, but he is Uncle Sam, right? In every sense of the term. After that, I'm jumping back and forth between continents, but I'm trying to go chronologically. So, Argentina, right? So the junta, the military junta, that's another 30,000 people killed. Another, something else that Henry Kissinger backed. You have Pakistan and, killing of Bengalis. Again, hundreds of thousands of people killed. And then the funny thing is that in 1973, he gets a Nobel Peace Prize, right? Like this man, Jesus, I mean, his hands are like completely drenched in blood. He's red. His entire body is drenched in blood. No, never mind his hands. He gets a Nobel Peace Prize. I feel bad trashing it because, both of my parents have Nobel Peace Prizes, but they didn't, kill people in Southeast Asia or something like that. They did UN peacekeeping, which is very different. But you have people like Barack Obama and Henry Kissinger who unfortunately, they basically, they do the name a lot of harm. But yeah, that's they decided to give him the Nobel Peace Prize. And it's here, this is the section I was trying to show you. So this is 1976. Kissinger is briefed on Operation Condor, a secret program created by the intelligence services of the military dictatorships of South America to assassinate their political foes inside and outside their countries. Okay, so basically these are dictatorships in Latin America who just want to kill dissidents, whether they're inside their own countries or somewhere halfway across the globe. So Henry Kissinger blocks a State Department effort to warn these military juntas not to proceed with international assassinations. And then, so there's a dossier released by the National Security Archives showing that 5 days later, Condor's boldest and most infamous terrorist attack took place in downtown Washington, D.C., when a car bomb planted by Pinochet's agents, so again, that's the dictator he helped install in Chile, killed former Chilean ambassador Orlando Letelier and his young colleague Ronnie Moffett. So Henry Kissinger's just like, yeah, whatever, you can just do what you need to do, right? There's a funny clip actually that I recall of Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and of course, I think we all take issue with Bernie Sanders now after he kind of just like, acquiesced to Hillary Clinton and the neoliberal Democratic Party and just rolled over. But it's still a funny clip. It's in 2016. Let's take a look.
Where the Secretary and I have a very profound difference. In the last debate, and I believe in her book, very good book, by the way, in her book and in this last debate, she talked about getting the approval or the support or the mentoring of Henry Kissinger. Now, I find it rather amazing because I happen to believe that Henry Kissinger was one of the most destructive secretaries of state in the modern history of this country. I am proud to say that Henry...
Why do you say destructive when you call him the butcher? Everyone says like Assad the butcher, but no one says Kissinger the butcher. Come on, say it with me, guys. If we say it, it will catch on. Kissinger the butcher. Okay, everybody, 1, 2, 3. Kissinger the butcher.
Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger. And in fact, Kissinger's actions in Cambodia, when the United States bombed that country, overthrew Prince Sihanouk, created the instability for Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge to come in, who then butchered some 3 million innocent people, one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. So count me in as somebody who will not be listening to Henry Kissinger.
Well, I know journalists have asked who you do listen to on foreign policy, and we have yet to know who that is.
Well, it ain't Henry Kissinger, that's for sure.
That's fine.
Okay, he kind of did a great job at roasting her, but she was just like, can you just roll over already? Now's the time, Bernie. You do it now. Okay, I know this is completely petty and unrelated, but look, have you seen Henry Kissinger's signature? What is this thing? This is his official signature. It's like he took a pen and tried to write with his foot or something. What the hell is this? You know, you expect someone who's murdered so many people, who's so evil, to have like an evil emblem or some kind of seal. This is pathetic, man. What is this? All right. Anyway, you know, aside from his signature, hold on. Let me play this clip for you. It's from okay.
Democratic Party. And then Kissinger founds, of course, Kissinger Associates. And so he's out of office now for what?
Okay, so this is about Henry Kissinger and his time after office. So after he's, you know, murdered all these people in, you know, Southeast Asia and in Vietnam and Indonesia, and then going on to Latin America and so on. So now he's out of office, right? He's got his Nobel Peace Prize.
76 to now is, you know, with a half a day, 50 years, and during that time, his Kissinger Associates has been a kind of premier concierge service for the global elite. It's broken. It basically broken the privatization of national industries in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, in Russia. He's a key player in all of these movements. We have no information about any of that, right? And it's arguably more consequential in some ways. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I guess the actual war crimes were when he was in office for 8 years. But there is this black hole of his role as a consultant to the global elite during this very consequential moment in which an enormous amount of wealth transferred from the bottom to the top, and Kissinger was deeply involved in that. He helped broker NAFTA, for example. He told Clinton that Clinton had political capital to do only one of two things his first year. He could either pass Hillary Clinton's national health program, or he could push for NAFTA. And he advised him to push for NAFTA, and Clinton did. And we got NAFTA, and we didn't get a healthcare expansion, which I think says a lot about the post-Cold War trajectory of the United States and how we got.
Yeah. I mean, you know, something else that I would also add to Kissinger's time is, you know, with apartheid South Africa. So basically, no one would touch South Africa. I think he was the first U.S. Secretary of State to go there in a couple of decades, right? Since a couple of decades. So he by going there, he met also, I remember, with the leadership in Germany. Right, so it was, you know, as he loves to do, in and outside of the concerned country. So he basically, my point here is that he lent and he gave legitimacy to that apartheid government by meeting with them, right? Because, you know, before him, no one would touch them, and you know, he did kind of like strong arm them and push them into accepting black majority, but I don't think it was out of his concern for black people in you know, who are living under apartheid South Africa. Keep in mind, he's meeting with them after the massacre in Soweto. So it's not just like, you know, he's having dinner with them. They just butchered a bunch of students, okay? Right? And he's you know, meeting with them and lending them some form of legitimacy, you know, having been, having held all of these official titles in the U.S. government. And so, you know, I don't think he had any concern whatsoever for black people living under apartheid. And even there's this funny graphic here from the Associated Press. I think it was published around that time. Kissinger's African peace mission, right? Like he's the noble white man will come and school you on what to do with your countries, right? So once again, what does he do here? Not only the apartheid issue I just mentioned, but he also prolongs, you know, the conflict, right? So this is concerning Angola and South Africa and so on. He just makes things worse wherever he goes. And people, they still lend him, you know, the title of the best diplomat of the 20th century. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's a constructed, a fake, synthetic title. And keep in mind, Richard Nixon. I'm kind of jumping between issues because I can't handle all of this Kissinger at once. There's too much to say. When they had the Watergate scandal, you have to keep in mind that Nixon resigned, but Kissinger, his reputation untarnished, of course. And I find it shocking that it's taken so many decades for people to like wake up and see him for who he is, because now he gets a lot more heat for this, and you'll see a lot more heat against him in the mainstream press. Although it's not enough for me to sit here and say, well, most people have woken up and most of the media have woken up to who Henry Kissinger really is. No, unfortunately they haven't, and they still kind of idolize him. And I'm, when it comes to the Middle East, right? Because you have this term shuttle diplomacy that was invented, I'm talking about the 1973, the Yom Kippur war. So again, this is Egypt, Syria, Israel, etc. And Henry Kissinger, when it comes to Syria, he's meeting with Hafez al-Assad, who's Bashar al-Assad's father. And there's a book, a very, very good book, which details the meeting minutes from the Syrian official archives, right? And it's a book that's written by Buthain Shaban. She's basically, if you paid attention to Assad's Arab League visit 2 weeks ago, and I pointed this out when I was showing you his speech, there are two people sitting behind him at the Arab League, right? It was Faisal al-Maqdad, who's the foreign minister, and Buthain Shaban. That's how important she is. Okay, so she's a political and media advisor to both Bashar and his father. Okay, so she took the conversations that Kissinger had with Hafez al-Assad, and she didn't publish all of them, but she basically put all this stuff into a book. And it's funny because I saw I don't remember where I read this garbage, but they were saying something about how it's not really giving you the full picture because it only draws from the Syrian archives and not both the Syrian and American archives. Yeah, well, she's sanctioned, so she can't exactly take a trip to Florida or something or Washington and just fetch them for you. But it's just garbage things they say to try and tarnish the book. But yeah, I just want to read you again. I'm jumping back to back and forth in time. This is here from The Guardian. Okay, let's see what they said about his peace plan. So Kissinger would become engaged by events in Angola, where after a left-wing military coup in 1974 against Lisbon's Estado Novo dictatorship, the new regime immediately stopped all military action in the African colony, leading to independence in 1975. Very important because Angola was as you might have understood, it was a Portuguese colony. Okay, so Lisbon is the capital of Portugal, and once again, this is a place where Kissinger, he just goes there and craps all over the place and makes it worse. And it's funny because people think of him, oh, he's so intelligent, he's so brave, he's so clear-minded, and he has this foresight that nobody else has. He's a goddamn idiot. I don't think he ever expected that Cuba would send troops to Angola and help them in there. And it completely caught him off guard. And unfortunately, he as I said, he crapped all over the place and made things worse. Now, my parents also, they served in UN peacekeeping in Angola as well. That's a decade later though. But let me just continue the what it says here. So concerned, this is Henry Kissinger, right? Henry Kissinger was concerned that the Marxist-Leninist People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, that's a mouthful, we'll just say MPLA, one of the combatants in the civil war that followed the coup, would sweep to power, opening the way for Soviet influence. Kissinger moved to engage with Africa. So once again, it's this Cold War thinking that, if you are fighting, if you're fighting with the Soviets or you're backed by the Soviets, then I'm going to go and back your opponent. Okay? This is the Cold War, unfortunately. You have the United States fighting against the Russians, against the Soviets through proxies. Okay? Now, in this case, obviously, this is not about America fighting the Russians. The Russians have nothing to do with this because obviously, you know, there's political and material support, but this is a decolonization movement, okay? It's an anti-colonial movement, just people who want to get rid of white colonizers who come from Portugal, okay? So we don't want to denigrate it. Just always keep that in mind. So, I mean, Henry Kissinger is basically, you know, kind of trying to screw people over because they fought for their own independence. Anyway, let me continue. So, in his memoir, Eastham summarized Kissinger's ambition as, quote, he was determined to seize in Angola what he considered a timely opportunity to display America and Kissinger's strength. Keep in mind, they're talking. These are excerpts from people who worked in the State Department, and you know, basically, who worked in the African Affairs Bureau, talking about how Kissinger was at the time. Okay, so so this is going back to the quote. He believed that defeating the MPLA, which he considered pro-Soviet, could expunge the image of a flabby United States in retreat after Vietnam. Moreover, he thought he could do it on the cheap with clandestine CIA collaboration. He was soon to be proved dead wrong. So remember, this is just after the Americans have been humiliated in Vietnam. You know, Kissinger's so-called peace talks really amounted to nothing in the span of 2 years, you know, with Saigon and everything. So he's trying to make America and himself look good. That's what this is about when he goes to destroy Africa and gets involved in Angola. So the Cubans come in to support the MPLA after South Africa invaded, and its forces drove almost to the capital in Luanda. Okay, Luanda's the capital of Angola. And Kissinger believed that Angola, if Angola would fall, then you'd have, you know, the neighboring countries, Rhodesia, and then actually South Africa itself being, well, I mean, Rhodesia is Zimbabwe now, okay? So it was called that at the time. But, you know, this is, again, this typical Cold War thinking that, oh, we have to contain communism before it spreads. And then, you know, it just ends up destroying countries. It doesn't really actually help anyone. And you know, what the hell are you doing over there? That's also a question to be asked. So this is a historian, okay, Nancy Mitchell. He said that Kissinger had a reputation for being a strategic genius, but if you study what Kissinger did in Angola and Rhodesia, it really sheds a light on the weakness of his entire policy in Africa, but also the Middle East and Vietnam. He misread the situation in Angola from the start. He never expected the Cubans to intervene. Okay? And, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. Henry Kissinger is, you know, I really completely feel for him fleeing, you know, Nazi persecution and going to the United States. And you know, it's really great for him that he was, you know, able to find a new life there with his family and he became a citizen and all these things. It's really good. But he you know, he ended up killing so many people. I mean, he's, you know, literally what you'd call a war criminal, a mass murderer. And I just don't understand why, you know, he gets a pass. And the other things you have to consider, where he's wiretapping, you know, people that are, you know, in the upper echelon of the entire U.S. government. He's literally, you know, spying on U.S. government officials. And yes, the fact that he was told to do it, you know, doesn't make it any better. He still carried out these things. I mean, you know, if he were anybody else, he'd be jailed for it. It's you've got conspiracy, you've got treason, you've got a million things that you can do with that. But he gets a pass, right? Like all of these people who are, you know, the what you'd call the elite or the upper echelon. And so, the fact that he's killed so many people and he gets to live to be 100, I find this, you know, it's a sad irony. And I'm not trying to say that he should be robbed of life, but the motherfucker killed, you know, I mean, millions of people. He is a disgusting human being, and he is anything but a diplomat. You know, he is the complete opposite of what a diplomat should be, of what a peacemaker is. He is a mass murdering criminal, a war criminal, and you know, let's be unequivocal about it. Period. No amount of whitewashing or rewriting of history is going to help Henry Kissinger. This guy is really a scumbag through and through. Period. Here, let me show you something with South Africa, since we're talking about we were just mentioning South Africa, and I'm just trying to put the thing up on the screen. If you've just joined, please let me know in the comments where you're joining from, where you're watching from, and I'll there we go. Okay. By the way, we've got almost 800 people watching, so if you just joined, please hit the thumbs up button, hit the like button. So let's talk about Putin, let's talk about South Africa, and what these two have to do with each other, okay? So just today, South Africa declared that all the BRICS leaders, meaning Putin included, attending the BRICS summit in South Africa in August will be given blanket immunity. So basically, why did they do this? They did this because they're in a very awkward position where South Africa is a member of the International Criminal Court. So, you know, they're a signatory of the Rome Statute from 1998, and the ICC just a few months ago in March they issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. So if Putin, you know, he gets to Pretoria, he gets to South Africa, he steps off the plane, they have to arrest him because there's a warrant out for his arrest. And South Africa has domesticated this law, right? They've basically integrated it into their constitution and so on. And South Africa, here's the document, by the way, right? So this is where they've used the Diplomatic Immunities and Privileges Act of 2001 to give all the delegates, right? So when they say delegates, they mean the presidents, the people attending, to give all of them immunity. So that means Lula, that means Modi, you know, because it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And so, you know, it's funny because South Africa, they've been in this position before. In 2005, I think it was, Bashir, who was then the president of Sudan. Now, of course, Sudan's in a completely different situation, and I've covered, you know, I'm the conflict that's going on now, which is actually, you know, goes back many years. I've done separate videos on that about Dogolo and so on, you know, and the rapid strike forces and so on. I've explained that there. But back then, Bashir was the president, and he went from Sudan and he visited South Africa. And they were also supposed to arrest him then, and they didn't. And they actually helped him flee before, because you see what's going on is the opposition, you know, which is today is the Democratic Alliance. But you have people in South Africa who are like, yeah, we should arrest this guy. And they're going to the courts, and they're basically trying to get the courts to order the government into, you know, carrying out and executing the warrant. And so before the courts could actually act, the government helped Bashir escape. And well, you know, there's basically the Supreme Court in South Africa came out and said, no, you should have arrested Bashir. And now you've got Putin who's coming in almost, you know, an identical situation. And there's not only the Rome Statute and the ICC telling him you have to arrest him, but there's literally a legal precedent. You know, there's a Supreme Court ruling that they have to do this. And so the government in South Africa, you have to understand, which is ruled by the ANC, this is the anti-apartheid government that we're talking about. I mean, you know, the president literally helped write the Constitution with Nelson Mandela. So they love, well, not love, perhaps that's a strong word, but they really respect and they admire the Russians and the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union, you know, often helped anti-colonial movements, and it stood against apartheid in South Africa, and it gave the ANC support and so on. So they're not going to turn around now and just like backstab the Russians. You know, it's just, it feels wrong. And on top of that, South Africa is a BRICS country. You know, they're one of the emerging giants. So it doesn't make, you know, business-wise, it makes no sense to stab the Russians in the back and to arrest Putin. You have to understand, we are talking about Russia. We are not talking about some random country. You know, this is, and I would say the same thing about the United States. You know, unfortunately, those war criminals were never brought to justice. But my point here is that these are big world powers we're talking about. You can't just arrest the president, you know? And when I say this, you know, if Putin's going to get his turn, let's deal with Bush, and let's deal with, you know, Bush Sr. Well, he's gone already. Let's deal with Henry Kissinger, who we were just talking about. Putin is way down on the list, okay? But you understand my point. It's politically and economically, Russia is too big to mess with. Now, let me play you this clip of the South African President Ramaphosa.
Once again today, South Africa has not been and will not be drawn into a contest between global powers. We will maintain our position on the peaceful resolution of conflict wherever those conflicts occur.
Ramaphosa during his keynote address at Africa.
Right, so why is this important? It's because he's trying to signal that we're not going to arrest Putin. We're not going to get drawn into it. That's what he's saying, right? And I played you a clip of the ANC Secretary General the other day. Let me show you this BBC. It was this clip, actually. Let me just show it again, right? It's from Hard Talk. Look at him getting schooled.
Is a treaty member of the International Criminal Court. If Putin comes here in August as planned, your government will be obliged to arrest him. As head of the ANC, do you believe your government should and indeed will arrest Vladimir Putin?
If it was according to the ANC, we will want President Putin to be here even tomorrow.
You would?
To come to our country. But
you would welcome Vladimir Putin here right now?
Of course we will welcome.
A man who is being investigated for war crimes by the International Criminal Court.
We will welcome him to come here as part and parcel of BRICS, but we know that we are constrained by the ICC in terms of doing that. Putin is a head of state. Do you think that a head of state can just be arrested anywhere? How many crimes have your country committed in Iraq? How many crimes have everyone else who's so vocal today committed in Iraq and Afghanistan? Have you arrested them? You have not.
No, we have not. You know why? Because according to the High Court, because people tried getting Tony Blair rightfully arrested, the High Court said that invading a country, which legally it's called a crime of aggression, the High Court said invading a country is not a crime in England. Now it is, right? Because you have this basically you have under the Rome Statute in the ICC, you have, you know, genocide, you have crimes against humanity, the crime of aggression, so invading a country. Actually, I should say that that's number 4 on the list, right? That wasn't ratified by the United Kingdom well after Tony Blair had left. So I agree, you should not apply the law retroactively, meaning if you know, today it's a crime. If today something becomes a crime, you can't start going after everybody who's, you know, committed this crime as of or what is a crime as of today. You can't go, you know, back in time and start arresting all of them. It's ridiculous. But the thing is with Tony Blair, you know, with people like that, we're not talking about somebody who robbed a store, you know, or did something shady. I mean, you know, this guy killed millions of people. It's not something you take lightly. But in any case, my opinion aside, the law is not applied retroactively in most countries anyway. And Tony Blair, you know, he gets off scot-free. So no, we have not arrested our war criminals to answer his question. Let me show you. Again, this is BBC Hard Talk, right? In case you guys don't know the guy getting schooled. Here he is again, getting schooled a second time. Are you ready?
South Africa right now calls itself non-aligned.
In the context of the war, but these are two different things. South Africa is an ally of Russia. Now, the second question is, where does South Africa stand on the war? It says I'm a non-aligned in relation to war. But Russia remains South Africa's friend. So we cannot create confusion around there. Don't create an impression that it is Malema who's going to come and create an alliance with Russia.
But there are some very specific...
Actually, I will
so.
go beyond that. I will go beyond the friendship with Russia, and in the war, I will align with Russia, and I will even supply the weapons to Russia. Because Russia is in a war with imperialism, and any agenda that seeks to push back imperialist agendas, it's well within the policies of the EFF.
South Africa right now called...
He wasn't ready for that. He wasn't ready for that, right? These guys like, you support the Russians? You are aware that this man is accused of war crimes, like he's like some fucking, you know, headmaster at some boys' school. God, it's really incredible, you know. It's incredible. But he got schooled multiple times. I think he'll be leaving South Africa very soon. So I think, as I said, the South Africa is a very smart country, and they are a very wealthy country, and they are, as I said, one of the giants, one of the 5 giants of the BRICS, right? I mean, you can call them developing economies, but that's an understatement. They're not stupid. They're not stupid. And you heard his sentiment. He said Russia is in a war with imperialism. So I'm not just going to be non-aligned. He said I'm going to supply Russia with weapons. That's what he said. Now that doesn't mean that South Africa is really supplying Russia with weapons, because that's what the Americans are accusing them of. And then the American ambassador, had to apologize the day after he got schooled. Jesus Christ, that was so funny, man. He got summoned to the foreign ministry the next morning, and he got dressed down, right? He got the démarche. Again, we covered that, but it's worth bringing up again because of how funny it is. This is really interesting to see, because it's kind of, they can't let South Africa go, right? It's really difficult for them to see non-aligned countries or countries that support Russia actually, have differing opinions. They can't grasp this in the media. Their brains explode, right? So no, Putin is not going to be arrested unless something, drastic changes from here to August. He's not going to be arrested when he gets to Pretoria. And let me put it like this. On the one hand, I understand the argument that South Africa, they are the ones who signed the Rome Statute. They got themselves into the ICC. They joined as a member, and they have to apply the law. And they have a legal the Supreme Court literally, after the case with Bashir, said, you guys had to arrest him. You can't just go around doing this. You must arrest him. You must execute the warrant. I understand this. Let me just tell you this, though. If South Africa has to arrest Putin, then who has to arrest Tony Blair and George Bush and George Bush Sr., right? And Donald Trump and Obama and Joe Biden. These guys, look, Joe Biden is inside Syria stealing oil. He's occupying half the country. Does anyone at the ICC give a crap about this man? Do they even give a shit to look at a piece of paper with his name on it at the ICC? Zero. Never, ever, ever you're going to see Joe Biden at the ICC. Ever. Forget it. The Americans have something. This is an actual law in the United States that George Bush signed in 2002. And it's basically a law that stipulates that the Americans will invade The Hague, the ICC. This is the same court we are talking about. They will invade this court if you take an American there. So don't come here and say, oh, South Africa, you have to follow the law. No. This is insane. Now, to be fair, the Americans, they didn't sign the Rome Statute. I mean, if I recall, Bill Clinton delayed it to his last day in office, and then he handed, the mess over to George Bush, who just never ratified it. So, the Americans they're not in the ICC. Fine, I understand. Neither are the Russians. But you can't take this court seriously because all they do is they go after African presidents and people from Yugoslavia. That's all they care about. It's a court that goes after Africans and people from Yugoslavia. That's it. And the British war criminals and the French war criminals and the American war criminals, they are left alone. They have immunity. How is this fair? How are you telling people in South Africa to take this court seriously when all it does is look away from the West and just go after people in the East? I'm sorry, but it's very difficult. It's a sad thing. It should be, in an ideal world, in a utopia, the ICC, it should be something that actually deters people from doing things like Iraq, from doing things like Afghanistan. It doesn't serve its purpose. Look at the Palestinians, for example. It's been a year and a half, barely a year and a half, that the ICC have even agreed to look at the case of Israeli war crimes in Palestine, because Palestine is not a member of the United Nations or a full member. They just have observer status because we're not allowed to give the Palestinians their own country. That's called Israel now, apparently, and the war crimes committed against them. We have to look over whether we cover this place because it's not really we don't know if we have jurisdiction there since it's not a real country. And then okay, fine, we do decide that we have jurisdiction, but we're not really going to do anything. And then the chief prosecutor leaves and just hands it over to someone else. Yeah, I mean, come on. Remember, the Americans sanctioned her, Fatou Bensouda, and also the head of the judiciary, right? They sanctioned them like 2 years ago. Mike Pompeo sanctioned them. So that's how much respect the Americans have for this court. So when you see the Americans starting to wag their fingers at South Africa and say, oh, you have to follow the ICC's you have to execute the ICC's warrant, and you have to respect your commitments and blah blah blah. Come on. Let's not insult each other's intelligence. Come on. Besides, this blanket immunity is for everybody attending BRICS, as I said. It's not just for Putin. They didn't, they're not giving him any preferential treatment, you could say. We'll leave it at that, shall we? Let's go. We've got more things to look at. Let me get rid of Henry Kissinger in my face. God, I don't want to see him anymore. Okay. Here, let's talk about the drone attack on Moscow, because that's very big. And okay. So you have, Christ, I don't even know where to begin with this. Ukraine and NATO think it's a good idea to attack the capital of a country with nuclear weapons. So today they've launched their biggest barrage yet of drones, right? In this day and age, we send drones and artillery shells, but mainly drones. And they haven't really done any damage. Actually it was 4 weeks ago exactly. The Kremlin itself was attacked with drones. And I did not a double take, a quadruple take. I was like, what? They did what with what? No, yeah, this is becoming more common. And the reason that they've done this, according to Putin, and I'll play the clip in a second, is that the Russians struck the headquarters of military intelligence, the Ukrainian one, yes. And so this was basically their revenge, yes, their act of vengeance. Now I'll play you a couple of clips. This is what we have from the drone attack on Moscow. It sounds like somebody's moped.
Да. Жужжание было. Со стороны Одинцова 2 хлопка было, вверху было видно в небе. Именно прямо.
Someone is gonna have to translate in the comments. I only understand suka and some other words in Russian. Sorry. Here's another video. Okay, so this is a residential building, and here is what Putin thinks of all this.
Ну вот теперь, как известно, дошли вот до удара беспилотников. Российские вооруженные силы, которые вынуждены были ответить, Россия вынуждена была ответить на развязанную украинским режимом войну на Донбассе, вынуждены были ответить мы все началом специальной военной операции, наносят удары по территории Украины, но высокоточным оружием большой дальности именно по объектам военной инфраструктуры, либо по складам с боеприпасами, либо ГСМ, используемым для ведения боевых действий. Вот мы уже говорили и о возможности нанесения ударов по штабам принятия решения, по центрам принятия решений. Разумеется, к этой категории относится и штаб военной разведки Украины, которому был нанесен удар 2-3 дня назад. В ответ, как известно, киевский режим выбрал другой путь попыток запугивания России, запугивания граждан России и ударов по жилым зданиям. Это, конечно, явный признак террористической деятельности.
Right. So here, as you'll see in the next moment, anti-aircraft surface-to-air missile. So they can shoot some of these things down. Actually, I think they were saying officially that 8 drones attacked Russia and they shot down all of them, or they crashed. So basically, no one was killed. I think someone was injured. But my point is that they're trying to the shape of warfare on the ground in Ukraine. The landscape is being changed right now because it's turning into how far can we go with drones? That's really what it is, right? So they are attacking the Kremlin with drones a few weeks ago. Now they're attacking residential areas with drones. And if you paid attention, I don't know if many of you saw this, but they also attacked Russian ships in the Black Sea with drones. This is just 5 days ago. Okay, here's some of the clips. So just keep in mind, these are not aerial unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, which are drones. They're seaborne. Okay. You can see the footage cutting out there. Here's another one, another clip. So that one was blown up by the Russians. The other one seems, the previous clip, it seems that it actually hit the ship. So this is the new landscape. And it's I think it's a response to what Russia and Iran have been doing, because Iran is supplying Russia with very, very potent, very powerful drones, which when it was first announced or discovered, they were making fun of it, like the Russians can't produce their own drones, so they have to go get these crappy ones from Iran. Well, they're not laughing anymore. So now, their retaliation for hitting Ukrainian military intelligence headquarters, and for Russia taking Bakhmut, is this. They're basically hitting them with unmanned aerial vehicles, and it's so crazy because we are talking about Russia. I mean, if someone had attacked the White House a few weeks ago, you know, with drones, and they were attacking, you know, residential buildings with drones. I mean, how long do you think it would take for the United States military to just send, you know, a battalion? A battalion is too kind. Just let's say an actual army, you know, of Marines to completely obliterate that party from the face of the earth. It would take about, you know, 2 seconds, and they're on their way. So, you know, whether you support the Russians or you don't support the Russians is kind of irrelevant. We're talking about you know, because everybody loves Henry Kissinger, right? Let's talk about realism here, about realpolitik, right? You're talking about a country that has the most advanced nuclear weapons on Earth, and you have 50 nations supporting Ukraine, primarily NATO, comprising 30 of those 50 countries, arming Ukraine to do this, to attack the power center of the Russian Federation. I mean, this is madness. This is complete madness. Like I said, if you sent drones to attack the White House, you would not exist anymore. You're gone forever. So why is it okay for us to arm Ukraine to do the same thing, you know, to do the equivalent against the Russians? You know, this is madness. You are asking for World War III. You're asking for World War III. Let me show you this this tweet here. You have this person saying that every day this war goes on, Ukraine's kinetic reach expands in magnitude and frequency. Taking the war to Moscow is the goal. Yeah, so we've been saying. Nice of you to admit it in public. Little drones, they say, will turn into way more drones of increasing complexity, and then into cruise missiles, then ballistic missiles. Okay, so you want World War III and World War IV all gift wrapped into one. I mean, these people are sick. You know, these people they really got something wrong with them. And keep in mind, this is how most of people in mainstream media think. Let me show you another tweet. This is Glenn Greenwald commenting on what I just read to you. And Glenn says that these people so clearly crave world war. If you think a nuclear armed power will just sit by while the United States and NATO missiles are used to bomb its cities, good luck. The US suffered a one-day attack in 2001 and went to war for the next 20 years over it. Yeah, exactly, right? And, you know, you're not allowed to say anything about 9/11. 9/11 is the worst thing that ever happened in history, and the whole world should suffer, and, you know, people should be killed by the millions for it by mistake or not by mistake. Oh, we don't know. You know, it's just the United States is the victim. And, oh, okay. When it comes to the Russians, let's just keep punching, you know, keep testing your waters. Well done. And here's the Pentagon. The Pentagon say that, the White House. Well, the Pentagon said the same thing. They both said that they don't support attacks inside Russia. Really? So is that why you're arming Ukraine to do attacks inside Russia? Which one is it? A White House spokesperson said, "We saw the news and are still gathering information about what happened. As a general matter, we do not support attacks inside of Russia." What does that mean? We're still gathering information, like as if they didn't know what would happen, as if they're the ones who didn't press launch. Well, what is this crap? We're gathering information, like, you know, sorry, I gotta go. I gotta call Jeff over at the Pentagon and find out what happened. Jeff, are you with me? Is it true you've been launching drones on Ukraine? I mean, the Ukrainians been launching drones on Russia? Jeff, that's a bad thing. What is this crap, man? It's like they think we're idiots. Like, oh, we have no clue. We're gathering intelligence. We'll get back to you when we know. Yeah, all right. Here's another video. I love how it's just in the middle of a highway. They've just set up a SAM battery.
Russia says that Ukraine launched its biggest ever drone attack on Moscow on Tuesday, but all 8 drones were destroyed by its air defences. One politician branded it the worst attack on the capital since World War II. The incident coincided with the latest wave of airstrikes on Kiev, marking a moment where both capitals were hit on the same day. Some of Moscow's most prestigious areas were reportedly hit by drone debris, including Leninsky Prospect, a grand avenue crafted under Joseph Stalin, and an elite area of Western Moscow, where President Vladimir Putin has a residence.
Right, so now we get to Prigozhin, because he's very mad at Moscow, which is not the first time. And, you know, he basically, again, when I say Prigozhin, I'm talking about the head of Wagner PMC. So, you know, he's at odds with the Russian top brass because they won't give them enough weapons, right? So he basically accuses the Russian, bureaucracy and Shoigu, who runs the defense ministry, of not being committed enough to the war, and they're not sending Wagner and his soldiers enough weapons and supplies and so on. So today, when this drone attack happened and it hit, this very affluent and rich residential area, this is what he had to say.
По поводу беспилотников, которые летают над Москвой и в Москве. Твари вонючие, вы что творите? Вы скоты, отрывайте свои сраки из кабинетов, в которых вас посадили защищать эту страну. Вы являетесь Министерством обороны. Вы не сделали ни хера для того, чтобы наступать. Какого хуя вы допускаете прилета этих беспилотников в Москву?
I mean, honestly, it's kind of funny. It's really funny. I don't understand Russian, you know, to the degree of being able to appreciate his rants, but they certainly translate them well. No, that, you know, you always have things like this where you're like wondering, what the hell are you doing? I have the same reaction when I see the Israelis going into Syria. You know, I'm looking at the Russians. And I'm saying, and the Syrians, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Are you running Israeli jet and bombing tours? Like, no, I'm joking, of course, but it's frustrating. You know, you see, basically, you know, in this case, it's drones. With the Israelis, it's jets. But you see them just walking. They just, you know, walking like they own the place, or flying like they own the place. Yeah, you get angry. Anyway, you know, I think he does this in public because he thinks that it will push them into doing more. You know, I could have sworn he said that they're going to take, you know, sort of a month-long break. Not in total, but because of after they won in Bakhmut, he said his soldiers need time to recuperate and so on. But you know, you can understand his reaction. I'm sure the Ukrainians feel the same way. You know, when they see the Shahed Iranian drones coming in. But you know, if I were in their shoes, the first place I'd complain is the American embassy. You know, the United States started this crap. The United States are letting this happen to make money because, you know, when you have munitions and ordnance and payloads and bombs and bullets and boots and rifles and everything imaginable that it takes to equip soldiers being given to Ukraine, quote unquote, for free, someone's making money. There's a company that manufactures, you know, this bulletproof vest or the backpack, you know, the 40-kilogram pack that you have to take, the boots, all of it. Someone's manufacturing it and making money off of it. So the first place to complain is the American embassy. I don't think they'll care much, but you know, the thing is that, you know, we're laughing and joking, but it's very serious because, as I said, you have to consider in geopolitics and international relations, there exists, you know, there's a scale. When I don't mean a scale that goes up, I mean a scale to weigh things. There's a balance of power that needs to be maintained. And just because, you know, they teach you in school that, the Cold War ended in 1991. No, it didn't really. You know, the United States and Russia are still world powers, and they're still fighting it out in Europe to this day. And now, maybe it's not Berlin, it's Ukraine, and it's going to turn into a hot war, not a cold war, but a hot war, direct confrontation very soon. If you ask me, it's already happening. I mean, what you call drones being launched at the Kremlin and inside Moscow, it's a hot war. Just because they say it's Ukraine, it doesn't mean that NATO isn't behind it. And you can fault the Americans for going all the way to Ukraine and helping create this conflict. You can't fault the Russians, who are literally on their border, who are they're dealing within the bounds of their country, within the boundaries of their country and at the border of their country. You can't fault them for perceiving a threat, a very real threat. You just can't. As I said, if the shoe were on the other foot, if you had the Russians like arming Mexico or Canada, which is, it sounds unthinkable, but just imagine, and helping them send drones into the United States. I mean, they just goddamn nuke you. It's over. So I don't know for how long this is gonna go on. Until reality kind of hits these people in the face. The problem is that it's gonna hit all of us in the face, right? It's not just maniacs like this. The whole planet is gonna look very ugly if you have a nuclear war. There's no coming back from that. Everything will be over within 30 minutes. Literally the entire planet will be gone within 30 minutes. There's no coming back from that. So, and if somebody was launching drones at the White House, I tell you the same thing. You're playing with you're playing with fire. There are other ways to do this. Maybe let's ask Henry Kissinger, since he's such an amazing diplomat, right? Let's take some advice from him. Honestly though, I think the irony is that even that guy, that mass murderer, has said that what's happening in Ukraine is very dangerous. I don't care about what Henry Kissinger has to think about Ukraine and so on, but it's somebody told me. I don't know if that's true. In any case, what's next? Are they going to hit the defense ministry? And it's crazy. It's really crazy. They're playing with fire. When the Pentagon was attacked, and the World Trade Centers, and they tried to get the White House on 9/11, as so we're told. In any case, something definitely happened in New York, right? So when that happened, when 9/11 happened, they destroyed Iraq, they destroyed Afghanistan. They've turned the world upside down, looking for terrorists, quote unquote. And people have been told to just shut up and accept that this is how it goes. This is it. America has to do something. It has to respond to terrorist attacks and so on. And the whole planet has to accept that. If the Russians thought that way, I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to go into a whole resume of the war on terror. I mean, I've done a million of them, but it's into a summary of the war on terror. But it's really ugly, right? It's really ugly, and the Russians could easily turn around and start playing the victim now. Okay, let's talk about hold on, give me a second. I'm just trying to close this out. So this is something I've wanted to go through with you guys for a while now, and I was only made aware of this recently. Okay, so there's a journalist who's basically been accused of espionage, and he's a Spanish journalist, and they're keeping him in solitary confinement, and he's been in prison for over a year now, and he has no trial, nothing. So let me go through this with you. I see, by the way, we've got 1,000 people watching, so please make sure you've hit the like button. Please make sure you've hit the thumbs up. It helps the channel. and for other people to see it. So, 1 second. Right. So you guys know that I've covered Julian Assange's case. You know, I've covered it in and outside the court in England, and you know, I have a whole playlist detailing his case. I want to tell you though about another journalist who's also imprisoned in Europe, and his name is Pablo Gonzalez. He's a Spanish journalist, and he's currently in prison in Poland. Okay, he was arrested 5 days after the war in Ukraine started. So basically February 28th, 29th of 2022. Okay, so we're now in, you know, basically almost June in 2023. So, I mean, he's been well over a year in prison. And because he has dual nationality, he's both Russian and Spanish, because his father and mother are Russian and Spanish. They're accusing him of espionage. You know, this guy has not been, you know, there's been no trial, and every 3 months they just extend his detention another 3 months, right? So they're basically keeping him in prison in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day in his cell alone, no one to talk to. You know, the mail doesn't get through, and he, you know, he hasn't even been charged with anything. So I wanted to go through this because it's very important that we, you know, we call this out, and I make you guys aware of this, and we make some noise about his case, because it's such an atrocity, right? So the Guardian did a piece on this, but I actually found out through somebody else, but they did a quite, you know, they did a comprehensive piece. David Mendoza actually told me about his case, and you know, so in the Guardian they write that Pablo Gonzalez is a freelance journalist from Spain, and well, they say 10th week, but you know, now it's well over a year in Polish custody, while prosecutors there investigate espionage allegations that appear to be linked to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So in a case that raises red flags about press freedom in Europe at a time of war, prosecutors are expected to ask a judge for a further 3-month extension to the detention of Pablo Gonzalez, who has freelanced for media, including Spain's La Sexta channel, Spanish state news agency EFE, and the U.S. government-funded Voice of America. So, you know, as we know now, every 3 months they have asked for an extension. So yeah, they did. The prosecutors, you know, under Polish law, Gonzalez can be held in custody until he's put on trial, a process that lawyers say could easily take more than a year. So, I mean, that's scandalous. You know, that is really scandalous, because in you know, in many countries, at least in the United Kingdom, you know, you have to be charged with a crime officially within a certain number of hours, or else the police have to let you go, right? So these are things that date back, you know, a long time. I wouldn't say the UK is very consistent or always consistent in applying it, but yeah, it's you know, it's a legal concept that goes back many centuries, and Poland, in the case of Poland, though, you know, they can just keep extending this detention. It kind of reminds me of administrative detention, which I told you guys about when it comes to Israel arresting Palestinians. And the funny thing is that is actually also a British law, but it's a colonial one, right? So it's funny how you get treated in England versus how England treats you in your own country in Palestine, right? Anyway, you know, let's continue. So Polish officials accuse Pablo Gonzalez of being an agent of Russia's infamous GRU military intelligence. Quote, he carried out operations for the benefit of Russia, profiting from his status of journalist, which enabled him to freely travel around the world and Europe, including military conflict zones, according to a spokesperson for Poland's minister coordinator of special services. I mean, this is basically defamation, you know, just like accusing him of espionage with no proof. I mean, he could, if this were England, he could sue you into oblivion. The next sentence says, vast evidence, quote, vast evidence has been secured, which now undergoes a detailed analysis, the spokesperson said, adding that Gonzalez faces 10 years in jail for taking part in, quote, activities of foreign intelligence services against the Republic of Poland. So, Nazi Germany? What does this even mean? Like, What is he doing against Poland? This is ridiculous. Anyway, you know, I don't understand what this means. I feel like they're just trying to hush the fact that he's, you know, they have a journalist inside of like a maximum security prison with no charge, and they don't really know what to do, so they're just like smearing him. Friends and family of Pablo Gonzalez claim the allegations are absurd and have demanded that Gonzalez be tried or freed immediately. A Spanish journalist who's often traveled with Gonzalez says that, quote, "I have no doubt that he is not a spy," and actually traveled with him to many countries over a dozen years. So that's Teixeira who said that, or Teixeira, I'm not sure about the pronunciation. So Pablo Gonzalez, who was born in Russia and has joint Spanish and Russian nationality, was detained after agents from Poland's internal security agency, ABW, knocked on his hotel door in the border town of Claudia, you're gonna have to help me out with the pronunciation. I'm so sorry. Is it? I don't even want to say. I don't even want to try. They basically detained him in a border town shortly after midnight on 27th of February. Again, please excuse me, Claudia, and anyone who's Polish who's watching. Gonzalez had been covering the refugee crisis and also planned to report from the Ukrainian side of the border. His Polish lawyer, Bartosz Rogala, said that he was well, that Pablo Gonzalez is well, and had been visited by the Spanish consul. So the consul is basically someone who works in the embassy. Okay, so not the ambassador, but under the ambassador. His wife, Oyhana Goriena, complained that family letters and parcels had been either delayed or not handed over, and they include drawings from his children, she told The Guardian. Goriena said her husband made regular visits to see his father in Russia. Gonzalez's 2 passports give him different names. His Russian passport bears his father's surname, Rutsov and Pavel, the Russian version of Pablo, while his Spanish passport bears his mother's Spanish surname, Gonzalez. Supporters fear that this is seen as proof that he was using aliases. I mean, it's kind of difficult to do that, even if the surname is different. You know, today with facial recognition technology, they literally just have to scan his passport and it gets run through Interpol and Europol and a million other things. I don't think that using a different surname changes anything. The date of birth will be the same. The place of birth will be the same. It's literally, that doesn't prove that. Jesus, if that's criteria for being a spy, then you can arrest half, not half the planet, but, I'm just speaking figuratively. That confusion arises because Gonzalez's parents divorced and his mother moved to Spain when Gonzalez was a young boy, registering under her surname. Gonzalez's maternal grandfather had been one of thousands of Spanish children evacuated to Russia during the Spanish Civil War in 1936. Gonzalez speaks Russian. He studied Slavic languages at university and specializes in the post-Soviet world, reporting mostly for Spanish outlets, often spending half or more of the year away from the home in Spain's Basque country where his wife and 3 children live. In 2016, Gonzalez's name appeared on a list reportedly drawn up by academic researchers of 49 Spanish journalists, politicians, and activities whose Twitter comments were deemed pro-Russian. Wow. What such academics. They are so bright and stimulating our minds. Who the fuck are these morons? They can stuff their degrees up their goddamn asses. They mean nothing. You mean nothing. They just like to smear people who have different opinions. They're like fucking, they are everything that they accuse the Soviets of being, or the Syrians of being, or the North Koreans of being, right? Oh, you have made comments against the state. You are an American imperialist. Like they are this caricature. This is exactly who they are. Except they say that, oh, you made comments against the NATO. You are a pro-Russian bot. I mean, Jesus Christ. These people call themselves academics. They're like fucking children. As someone who works on the ground in Ukraine, that is a worry, Pablo Gonzalez said at the time. Yeah, you're damn right, it's a worry. It's defamation, and now he's gotten into trouble because of these academics, worthless bastards. Pablo Gonzalez began to have problems reporting early in February, weeks after the invasion on February 24th, when Ukrainian authorities questioned him while he was waiting for a live link with military positions behind him. So basically, Ukrainian authorities were interrogating him, and then they told him to go report to military intelligence. I mean, Jesus. Sorry, not military intelligence, the just Ukrainian intelligence. So he was then told, when he met with Ukrainian intelligence, to leave Ukraine, to just get out of the Ukraine. He was advised by Ukrainian intelligence to leave the country, but not formally expelled. Gonzalez sought advice from the Spanish consulate and then left for Poland. A few days later, agents from Spain's Center for National Intelligence, CNI, visited the family home near the town of Guernica and quizzed his wife. So now he's in trouble with Ukraine and Spain. I mean, you know, this is... His wife said there was nothing aggressive about it and they did not come into the house. They suggested that he might be pro-Russian. I don't actually know what that means. After all, a Russian national can be both pro-Russian and anti-Putin. Yeah, you don't say. Apparently this is not something that people in the West grasp, but yeah. So when Gonzalez heard about the visit, he returned to Spain, but when war broke out, he immediately left for Poland. He's a journalist. That's how he makes his living, said Gordiana, so his wife. Friends said he also believed Ukraine would allow him back. The Paris-based journalists NGO Reporters Without Borders is watching closely. They said that the Polish authorities must be more transparent about the evidence they hold against them, because so far, information is scarce and detaining a journalist for months without trial is very serious. Yes, it is. Pablo Gonzalez's fundamental rights need to be respected in Poland, an EU democracy. Gonzalez spent his 40th birthday in jail last month. So nothing has changed. This article was published when May of 2022. Yeah, so it's over a year old and nothing has changed. This guy's still in jail. There's been no trial. Nothing. This is his picture, by the way. Forgive me if I didn't show you his picture earlier, but you know, I wanted to kind of get the story out and tell you what's happening to him, because I find this so disgusting. You know, it's like you know, I'm at a loss for words. I'm really at a loss for words. So Interpress Service, they say that Pablo Gonzalez is 23 hours per day in his cell without natural light and gets just 1 hour to walk around in a 7x4 meter courtyard. Okay, so let me show you. This is his lawyer. Okay, describing his client's fate.
Más de un año después de su detención, el periodista vasco Pablo González ha podido recibir este viernes la visita del abogado Gonzalo Boyer.
Anímicamente está bien. Yo creo que la visita ha sido muy buena, entre otras cosas, porque le ha aclarado un poco cuál es la estrategia de defensa.
A Boyer, acostumbrado a visitar muchas cárceles, la de Radom le ha impresionado por su nivel de control y seguridad.
Con las cárceles a mí no me impresionan, pero evidentemente esta es una cárcel dentro de la cárcel.
El periodista vasco está en régimen de aislamiento.
Está 23 horas al día en su celda. No tiene contacto prácticamente con nadie.
El abogado le ha trasladado el apoyo que está recibiendo desde Euskal Herria.
Él estaba muy emocionado y sobre todo agradecido.
Gonzalo Boyer cree que las autoridades polacas ahora sí le reconocen como abogado de Pablo González porque algo ha empezado a cambiar.
Yo creo que ellos a estas alturas se están dándose cuenta de que alguien les engañó.
Aunque se preparan para un proceso todavía largo y difícil.
No hay una acusación formal y de hecho los abogados no tenemos un acceso pleno a las actuaciones, lo cual genera una indefensión clara, ¿no?
Nos cuenta además que el periodista está especialmente preocupado porque el acceso a sus dispositivos ha dejado al descubierto a todas sus fuentes.
Son fuentes delicadas. Esas fuentes pueden estar ahora en riesgo.
Acusa a Polonia de haber vulnerado el secreto profesional.
Muy feo todo.
So, I mean, I'm not even sure what to say. Again, this is so unfair. You know, that's a violation of his human rights. You would think that in an EU country, and again, this goes for Assange, although now we're not in the EU anymore, but you know, still Council of Europe, we're still supposed to be respecting that. You know, you would think that in any country, European or otherwise, because you know, unlike Joseph Borrell, I don't think that Europe is the garden of the planet. This imperialist crap. Anyway, you would think that as a journalist, especially, people would understand. Oh, okay, you know, you travel a lot. Oh, okay, you go to dangerous places and you do a lot of hard work. That guy's got a lot of you know, a lot of grit and drive and bravery. I mean, I'm not too familiar with his reporting, and I don't have to be, but you can see that he was actually going into dangerous places, into you know, combat zones, and most journalists, you know, especially the ones who are in the West and think that this is okay because he might be pro-Russia, whatever that means. You know, they will never do that. They will never do this work. Yeah, you know, I can't help but be reminded of Julian Assange's case. You have another journalist who is anti-war, who is, you know, criticizing the West, and they just, you know, literally throw them in prison, throw them in jail. They cook up lies about them. They smear them. They destroy their lives. They separate them from their family. They take their devices. They steal, you know, their belongings, which is, I mean, Jesus, you know, he hasn't even been accused of a crime, you know, formally. On what basis are you taking his devices? You know, this is really nasty stuff. I'm trying to see if he has a mailing address, because they said he has contact. He's got contact with barely anybody, with no one. He's in solitary confinement. So if he has a mailing address, Claudia is very kind. She's looking up whether he has one, and there's a page here that you can follow on Twitter. I'm trying to see if he has one, because then you can send him some mail, or try to, in any case. And let me just show you this speech from Claire Daly. She's a member of European Parliament and MEP.
Really impressive that the Parliament has swung into action so quickly in relation to the case of anti-Putin, anti-Ukrainian war journalist Vladimir Kara-Murza, who was given a 25-year prison sentence this week for his journalism, a sentence rightly slammed by the EU as outrageously harsh. It is. But it's still 150 years less than Julian Assange will get if he's convicted and prosecuted in the US for his anti-war journalism, exposing US war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's been in prison for over 4 years, denied of his freedom for many more, yet we've never had one of these discussions in here calling for his release. We've never had one discussion about the case of Pablo Gonzalez, imprisoned in Poland for the last year for his anti-war journalism. Unless we're consistent in these motions, then they're nothing more than meaningless geopolitical shams, the instrumentalisation of human rights for political ends, and that is not good enough.
Claire, she's great. She's really great. So I'm gonna look for his mailing address. Maybe he has one, and if there is one, I'll put it in the description and in the pinned comment, so you guys can send him some mail. At the very least, hopefully it gets through. But you know, I want you guys to make some noise about his case, because it's very concerning. I don't think that. I mean, solitary confinement, 23. Well, this is insane. You know, like you don't treat people like that. And he's had all of his rights that you can think of, all of his rights violated. Where's the right to a fair trial? Where's his due process? How can you hold someone in prison for over a year and you don't even charge them with a crime? I mean, what is that? At least make something up, you know? I mean, the funny thing is that they basically have, you know, the spokesperson who I read to you from, they're basically trying to justify imprisoning him, but without actually charging him, because there's probably no evidence. And you know, that's just another issue, because even if like tomorrow morning he's released, which I mean would be great, but even if tomorrow morning he's released, he's still got this stain on him, which was cooked up and made up to smear him, you know, and that's extremely disturbing. It's extremely disturbing. So, you know, here's another photo of him, by the way. This is from the Interpress service. All right, so that's him right there. Pablo Gonzalez. Okay, make some noise for him. Make some noise for him, just like for Assange. You know, when we can, you know, raise awareness about cases like this, we should do that. So I hope that, you know, what I've just told you here mobilizes some of you, and then you mobilize others, and it spreads and so on. Claudia has just sent me a link. I'll put this in the description because I can't seem to copy it, but there you go. Okay, so I've got a few more topics to go through with you guys, and here's another prisoner who's gonna get ignored by Western media, you know, as usual. So as I said, here's another prisoner, Palestinian prisoner, who, you know, never gets mentioned in the Western media. His name is Walid Daqqa, and you know, he's 61 years old. He has bone marrow cancer, and he was just transferred to an intensive care unit in I think it was Remle prison, which is, it's not really, you know, a hospital. It's a someone who you know is this ill should actually be transferred to a hospital, but the Israelis are practicing something which is called intentional medical negligence. It's like when you see someone needs help and you just leave them there to die. You know, that's one way that the Israelis kill Palestinian resistance fighters and Palestinians in general. You know, doesn't even have to be a man or a fighter. It could be a woman. You know, there's I'm sorry because I forgot her name now, but I did a video about her. She was shot in the leg last year, and they just let her bleed out on the street, and they blocked the ambulance. You know, this is something we've seen a million times. In Jenin refugee camp, they raided it, and then they blocked the ambulances. Like, I literally showed you the video of them blocking the ambulance from reaching Palestinians. It's intentional medical negligence. So I just wanted to read to you about his case, because it's so bad. It's really, really so bad. So they've basically decided, the Israelis, right? They've decided to postpone a parole committee to review the possible early release of terminally ill Palestinian prisoner Walid Daqqa. Okay, so he's actually already done his time, right? They gave him 37 years. He already did the 37 years, and now they still won't release him. And even though he has cancer, and he had a stroke. So the court session to review this was postponed till May 31st. So that's actually today. We'll see if they go through with it. But this was published 6 days ago. Daqqa suffers from an advanced stage of bone marrow cancer, and he was transferred, as I told you guys, to the intensive care unit. It's actually at a different place. It's Asaf Harofe Hospital, south of Tel Aviv, right? So people are going taking to the street, and they were holding vigils and protesting for him in the last couple of days. He was imprisoned in 1986 by the Israelis for being involved in the killing of an Israeli soldier and given 37 years, which he completed in March 2023. But Israeli authorities extended his sentence by 2 years in 2017 over charges of smuggling cell phones into prison. Walid Daqqa may lose his life his health is in grave danger. He cannot walk or talk properly. He also cannot breathe normally. He's on a respirator. So that's according to Damir. Damir is an organization that advocates for Palestinian prisoners, right? They're very, very big. So Al-Damir also said that Walid Daqqa has completed his 37-year sentence. He is not someone who is on a security file anymore. He must be able to continue treatment outside of prison among his family, because even if he is released, it's not clear how long he will live. And they've been also meeting with diplomats to pressure their governments for his release. So on April 12th, he underwent surgery to remove a large portion of his right lung. And that's when he was placed in Ramleh clinic, which is, notoriously horrendous. And you wouldn't put anyone who's a little bit sick there, never mind someone who's just had part of their right lung removed. So just if you've lost count, this guy has bone marrow cancer. They removed part of his lung, and he also had a stroke, and they still won't release him from prison even though he completed his sentence. I mean, that is the definition of evil and cruelty. I've never seen anything so barbaric. The Israelis go around telling people, "Oh, we're a democracy. Oh, we are so we are so enlightened, and we have a judiciary and we have elections, and we're not like the barbaric Arabs next door." Really? Christ. Ben-Gvir, who you all know is Israel's security minister, the one who likes setting up tent offices in Sheikh Jarrah so that he can bring security along with him, right? And then give immunity for Israelis to kind of chant at Palestinians to leave their houses, right? Really, really nice guy. So he said that in a tweet that Daqqa should end his life in prison, right? That's what he said. A very merciful and reasonable man. Yes. Famous Ben-Gvir, Christ. So he's been complaining here, Walid Daqqa, he's been complaining about health problems since 2015, and they just kind of ignored him, and it's just gone worse and worse and worse, and they won't do anything about it. In mid-February, Daqqa suffered a severe stroke. Despite requiring emergency treatment, he was only transferred to hospital 11 days later. During that time, he lost 10 kilograms at least in a month and a half, and a significant amount of blood. So he had a stroke, and they wouldn't take him to hospital for 11 days. Usually when someone has a stroke, you're like rushing. You're literally in a race against time to get them to hospital. That's like you're just, because the faster you get them to hospital, the better it is. They can hopefully retain some of their motor skills and so on, right? You're literally in a race against time. It's like having a heart attack. You're in a race against time. Get them to the medics, and they just leave him for 11 fucking days in prison. I mean, once again, this is the definition of evil. Israel is who would do this? Who would do this to another human being? You wouldn't do that to a fucking Nazi. Even the German prisoners of war, you had to respect the Geneva Convention, even though they're Nazis. Why do the Israelis do this to a 61-year-old man who's supposed to be out of jail? It's disgusting. It's really disgusting behavior. There's no excuse for this. And let me show you another thing. In 1999, Walid Daqqa got married while behind bars. He and his wife welcomed their daughter, her name is Milad, in 2020, conceived after his sperm was smuggled out of prison. So he had to his wife had to smuggle his sperm out of prison just to have a child because they won't let him out. Walid is one of 23 prisoners who are being held in Israeli prisons in violation of the 1993 Oslo Accords, which stipulated that all Palestinian prisoners detained prior to the signing of the agreement would be released. Right? So this is, it's kind of, I'm making it an analogy here. It's kind of like the Good Friday Agreement. We agreed that any Irish prisoners would be released from British jails, even if you had guys who were serving 11 life sentences, right? Doesn't matter. You sign the agreement, you release them. Here, the Israelis just like, no, fuck it. Screw the agreement. We're just going to keep them in jail. You know, I really don't know what to say after this, because I feel like I shouldn't have to say anything. The you know, the situation speaks for itself. This is exactly why you cannot reason or you know, do any diplomacy with the Israelis, because they go back on their word. They don't respect their own agreements, which they signed, including the Oslo Accords, which shows you that any form of, you know, diplomacy with the Israelis will only get you screwed. I mean, we're in 2023, you know, like, you know, we're 3 decades later. What has changed for the Palestinian case? What has changed for Palestine? What has changed for, you know, the ambition of having a Palestinian state? Or just even forget the Palestinian state for one moment. Even the agreement to just release the prisoners, they won't respect that. How the hell are you going to get a country from these people, right? Even the concept that, oh, we should beg them to give us a country, or, you know, the Palestinians in their case, and they have to beg for the Israeli white Europeans to give them a country. I mean, this concept is insane, right? But going back to my points, this shows you cannot do any form of diplomacy with the Israelis, because they spit on diplomacy. They you know, they kick you while you're down, and they don't respect their own agreements. They go back on their word. You know, number two, this shows you that they have no respect for human rights. You know, even if you're in a, like I said, you're in a situation of conflict, of war. Even when you have prisoners, you treat them with some dignity, right? Geneva Convention or no Geneva Convention. You as human beings, you give them basic medical treatment, some food. You know, I don't have to explain this, right? It's just basic common decency and just giving them their dignity. No dignity, no medical treatment, nothing. Screw you. You know, if you're Palestinian and you're looking at this, I mean, what do you do? You just let the Israelis stamp on you. You just let the Israelis, you know, kick you around and treat you like crap and murder your senior citizens. I mean, you know, 37 years. Jesus Christ, you think he's a serial killer or something? You know, I mentioned Geneva Convention. If you go read the Geneva Convention, or you read the UN Charter, when someone invades your country, you're allowed to do anything under the sun to liberate your country. And that's a concept that we understand when it comes to Ukrainians. We give them weapons, actually, right? We arm them, and we allow them to send drones to attack the Kremlin, because we are so supportive of their right to resist. Well, where's Walid Daqqa's right to resist? He killed an Israeli soldier. What the fuck was the Israeli soldier doing on his land? Why wasn't the Israeli soldier at home? Why was he invading his country? Would you give a Ukrainian 37 years for killing a Russian soldier? In the West, we would applaud them and give them, you know, book deals and interviews. I mean, look at this double standard, right? And once again, even if you disagree with what he did, this guy, you know, he has a stroke and you leave him there for 11 days. What is this? There has to be, in any real judiciary, there has to be some form of leniency, of mercy. This is not only is there a lack of mercy or leniency in the Israeli so-called judiciary, it is the opposite. There is an excess. There is a gluttonous excess of violence and bloodlust and just, you know, evil. This is evil. I'm sorry. The way that this man has been treated is the definition of evil and hell. Period. So I've got some more topics for you guys. I'm just gonna get something to drink. So don't go anywhere, and I'll be right back in just a minute. All right? You get yourself something to drink as well. Let's go. We shall reconvene in a moment.
Sweden
wanted to join NATO. They broke with their, decades-long neutral stance. Turkey was one of the only countries, I think along with Hungary, that was saying, we're not going to let you in because you need to have consensus, right? You need all the members in NATO to say, okay, you can join. Their bid has kind of been in limbo because Turkey wanted to, extract several concessions. It was very clear that they really want to join NATO in Sweden, and they were doing everything they could to appease the Turks. And then this moron comes in front of the Turkish embassy and burns the Quran. I understand that in their point of view, this is freedom of expression, and you're in Sweden, you can do whatever you like. But you have to remember that if you're trying to get Turkey support, maybe wait until after you've gotten it. I mean, this is just dumb from a diplomatic level. They're doing everything to appease Turkey, and then because of one idiot, they let this go to waste. The Germans and the Americans have decided that it would be a good idea to send Ukraine tanks. German tanks against the Russian. Man, I'm perplexed by this. What do they think is going to happen? Because even if you can train the Ukrainian crews who are used to Soviet tanks to operate British tanks, and then you got to train them to operate German tanks, and then you got to train them to operate American tanks, and that's if they can even maintain the logistical supply line to work with these tanks, to keep them running. What kind of door are you opening now for the Russians to do? I mean, this is very clearly escalation. While Germany and the US are saying, yeah, we're going to give Ukraine tanks, the doomsday clock has been moved to 90 seconds to midnight. So this is basically, it's a measurement of how close we are to the end of the world, to the apocalypse, to annihilating the planet with nuclear weapons, right? And this is the closest it's ever been to midnight, okay? Midnight representing the end. Ukraine's most senior military commander has said that his forces need about 300 Western tanks. Over the last year, NATO allies in Eastern Europe supplied Ukraine with Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks that have been ground down or destroyed in constant fighting. Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks. Now, Ukraine, having been a Soviet satellite state and part of the Soviet Union, it was part of Russia, all of its military personnel being trained on Russian tanks. What do you think they're going to do with American tanks or German tanks, which they are not trained to operate? The Ukrainians know how to operate Russian tanks. That's all they know how to operate. The Ukrainians only use Soviet stuff, right? Until the last couple of years and until now. This is the first major influx of NATO weapons. And again, NATO has been training Ukrainian forces, but Challenger tanks, this is brand new. If they can't even use the tanks that they're trained to use, what makes you so confident they're going to know how to use a Leopard 2 or an M1A2 or a Challenger 2? Man, all right, baby, we're back. So let's talk about Serbia and NATO and, what's everything that's been happening there today. Okay, give me 1 sec. Let me pull this up. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about Serbia and NATO and this shall we call it a scuffle, to put it mildly, that took place today. I have a Serbian friend, a very good friend of mine. He's probably watching right now, and he asked me the other day to explain the Syrian conflict in 5 minutes, and I tried my best. I timed myself; it was 7, but okay. And the first thing he said to me was that this is basically what happened in Yugoslavia. Same thing, all your neighbors just want a piece of you, and they just tear you to shreds. So today, what happened is that recently you had elections which the Serbs boycotted. Now this is what in today's terms, or what in the West's terms. Here, let me show you on the map. It's funny, I have one ready for a Sykes Pico, which I was going to get to in a second, but yeah, here we go. Right, so this is former Yugoslavia. Okay, now up here in northern Kosovo, you have Serbian majority. And they boycotted these municipal elections. and the turnout was around 3.5%. 3.5%, which is, I mean, nothing. You know, in the United States, when you have 60% turnout, 70% turnout, that's you know, that's good. In some countries, 60% will be like considered very low, right? Now, of course, I'm talking presidential, which is different, right? But okay, let me. My point here is that 3.5% isn't just low. It's notoriously, you know, ridiculous. It's nothing. I you know, I think you should, you know, in any jurisdiction, you might look at that and call that invalid. But in any case, 3.5% was the turnout. And of course, because the Serbs boycotted this election because they don't accept this partitioning of, you know, of their country and so on. You have Albanian officials who assume these offices, and they tried going into their offices, and now you've had basically a fight between Serbs, Kosovo police, and NATO peacekeepers, right? And the Serbs hate both the Kosovo police and the NATO peacekeepers because they consider them, they consider their presence invalid and illegitimate and so on. Now, keep in mind, Kosovo used to be a province of Serbia. NATO basically, bombed the place to bits, destroyed it. So, yeah. We're told, though, that NATO is a defensive organization. So maybe we've got it wrong in Ukraine. I find this amazing that, like, we're supposed to just memory hole and forget that Yugoslavia, the bombing of Yugoslavia, the partitioning, the Sykes-Picoing of Yugoslavia ever happened, right? We're supposed to sit here and act like, oh, NATO is a magical unicorn defensive alliance that does nothing but noble acts of chivalry and comes riding on its white horse to save humanity. Oh yes, the white man, the glorious white man is here to save us through the grace and benevolence of NATO. Hallowed be their name. No. NATO is anything but noble. Now, again, if we were in the Cold War right now, you know, we were in the 1960s, maybe we could have a different conversation, but we're not. We're in 2023. NATO destroyed Yugoslavia. They destroyed Serbia. They bombed Serbia. They destroyed Belgrade. And when I watched scenes of the bombing just a few hours ago, I swear to God, and I'm going to show you the video right now. I swear to God, it looked exactly like Iraq. You remember shock and awe? To me, that's an act of terrorism. You know, they make you watch 9/11 footage and tell you that's terrorism, and it is. You know, I feel bad. Those are people that got nothing to do with Washington. They're just going about their business, right? But you want to look at an act of terrorism? Watch shock and awe when United States and UK bombed Iraq, and when they bombed when NATO bombed Serbia and Belgrade. That's terrorism in the flesh. You know, it looks identical. The clip, you know, I'm trying to find it again on YouTube. Hold on, let me. I think it was actually Al Jazeera who played it. It wasn't AP. Here, let me pull it up. Yeah, here it is.
The offensive was launched to force Serbian troops out of the province of Kosovo after accusations that the Serbs were committing atrocities against the ethnic Albanians. A decade on, Serbia is a country still wrestling with its past, as Jane Azzopardi reports.
There it is. Does that not look like Iraq? That's Baghdad. That Belgrade, Baghdad. Look at that. There is literally no difference. It even looks the same. It's like a copy-paste act of terrorism. You know, it's disgusting. And then they tell you NATO's defensive. So, you know, all of this unrest that they've crafted, I'll play the rest of it. I'll just to do them justice, you know,
The first bombing of its kind in NATO history. On March 24, 1999, Western nations carried out their threat against Serbia and began the biggest military conflict on Serbian soil since World War II. NATO saw the war as the only way to end President Slobodan Milosevic's.
Oh no, we were compelled. It was the only way. We had no choice. Yeah, okay. Maybe it was a foreign policy blunder, like they'll call Afghanistan, right? No, it wasn't a war crime. No, it was a mistake. You know, I put shaving cream on my toothbrush instead of toothpaste. It was a mistake. I just bombed, you know, I killed 1 million people in Iraq. It was a mistake. They're very lenient with their language, are they not? In any case, you know, this is a situation, right? You've got majority ethnic Serbs here, and these problems have not gone away. You know, the tensions, as they like to put it mildly, because this is what you call Balkanization. It's a process of, you know, going in and carving up a large country into smaller chunks, and you do it through sectarianism. You say, okay, if there are Muslims living there, I'm going to carve this out and make that a Muslim country. And I'm going to do it even though there are some Christians living there, or there are some Jews living there, or let's say, just say non-Muslims, where they could be Buddhists, whatever. And I'm going to do that even though it's completely impractical for their jobs, for their education, for their families, for everything. You know, it's a bureaucratic and emotional nightmare. And I'm going to take these Jews over here and carve out a country for them. And there are these Orthodox Christians there. I'll carve them up, and you know, the Catholics, I'll carve them up. And you know, it's just sectarianism, right? So you'll have people who live happily with each other. You know, they're neighbors. They have no problem with each other. They identify as one country, and then the West will just come in and just start carving up and cutting up. And then they create these, and you know, no one's saying that you know, these places, whether we're talking about Yugoslavia or we're talking about the Middle East, are utopias, but you know, you're going to have some tiny percentage of people who have, you know, problems with each other. Of course, it's normal, but then the West comes in and then amplifies that. So it's not a tiny percentage, a minuscule microscopic percentage. Now it's like, oh, there's a goddamn, you know, sectarian war, like in Iraq, right? You got Shia and Sunni who are fine with each other, right? And they come in and make it 1,000,000 times worse, the Americans and the British. So this is very much saying what they did. And you know, they carved Yugoslavia up into chunks, you know, it's as I said, Balkanization, and it's very similar of what they did in the Middle East. You know, you have something that's called Sykes-Picot, and I've talked to you guys about this many times before. So basically, the British and the French, the Sykes-Picot are British and French diplomats, so it's named after them. You know, they get together in secret and they start carving up Syria, and you know, what is the Middle East, you know, Mesopotamia. And just giving it to themselves. So like, oh, you know, you can have this chunk, and yes, you take this chunk over there, oh boy, and I'll have myself this little piece over here if you don't mind me. Yes, jolly good show, wonderful. Yes. Perhaps we can share this one as well. Yes, have a little bit of Palestine in your cup, eh? So this is what they've done, all right. And actually, the Russians were supposed to go along with it, but then, you know, the Russian Revolution happened. So there you go. And a lot of the, you know, again, they just invent countries, you know, and you know, they install all these monarchies in the Middle East, and many of them are still there today, actually, right? Again, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to make some of my viewers angry, but it's true. And the devious thing is that they had actually, at the same time they were doing this, remember, keep in mind, this is 1916, as it says below. You know, let me zoom out, because as I tell you, any map without a legend is garbage. Just you know, crumple it up and throw it away if it doesn't have a legend, an explanation of the colors. So you can see in dark purple that's French, and in pink is British rule, and so on. And my point is here that, you know, they had sent Lawrence of Arabia, as he's known now, to get the Arabs together and kick out the Ottomans, the Turks, who had taken most of the Middle East and down to Arabia. And they were very successful, and they succeeded. And the promise was that they would just leave them alone and leave the Middle East and get out, right? So they would give the Arab lands back to the Arabs if they helped them kick out Turkey, because this is World War I, right? So Turkey is with Germany, and France and Britain and Russia are fighting against them. And so, of course, they stick a knife in the back of the Arabs. And actually, Lawrence himself, who I don't think expected this, but yeah, they screwed them. So while they were basically doing their work for them, meaning the Arabs were doing Britain's work, liberating their homeland is for themselves, but they had sent Lawrence for that. When everything was said and done and they had succeeded, they then turned around and said, no, we're not leaving. This is now for France, this is for Britain, and so on. And then you had this occupation for another 20 years, right? So to this day, you have what is colonialism that lingers on. And I frankly have no clue why half the countries in Africa and the Middle East wouldn't just abandon these borders, because they're colonial borders. But again, it's very difficult, when every leader has a seat at the table of power, they're not going to give up their seat, right? It's very difficult to get someone off of that seat once they've sat on it, right? Once they've assumed their role. In any case, you have this this effect of colonialism, and the same thing in Africa, by the way, right? Exact same thing in Africa. They had this conference, Berlin Conference, which was basically just to decide, who would take what piece of Africa. Okay, the British go down this way and the French that way, and anyway, this is what they did to Yugoslavia, but of course they don't teach you that. They don't, it's balkanization. It's this partitioning of a country based on sectarianism, and it's so damaging that even 100 years later, you still see it, whether it's in Palestine, or whether it's 3 decades later in Yugoslavia. You still see the effects of what the West does, of what NATO does, and whether it's the British and French doing it in secret in 1916 and then out in the open, or whether it's NATO doing it. It's the same countries. It's the same countries doing the same thing to other people. They're going to their lands, carving them up, bombing them, and making up new countries, and just, destroying the place and just pitting neighbor against neighbor. Let me show you this video from George Galloway. He filmed it last year in Belgrade. To take a look, and you're gonna wonder, if NATO bombed these buildings, why don't they repair them? That's the whole point. In Serbia, they leave these buildings damaged on purpose, so you never forget what NATO did. And I think that is brilliant.
They were partying like it was 1999. In fact, it was in 1999 when peaceful NATO were partying here in a European capital, the city of Belgrade. They tell you that NATO is a defensive organization. Tell that to the people of former Yugoslavia. Tell that to the people of Belgrade. For almost 3 months, they were bombing and killing here in the heart of Europe. NATO is, as it has always been, a front for the American empire. If you're supporting it, you're acting against the interests of the people of Europe. You're acting in the interests of the continuing domination of the globe by the United States of America. They even bombed the Chinese embassy here in 1999. They silenced a television station, not by ordinance, but yes, by ordnance of the exploding kind. They killed 16 employees of the state radio and television, the equivalent of the BBC in Belgrade, including makeup ladies and tea ladies. They did so in order to complete the destruction and the dismemberment of the former Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia. Nobody much said or did anything against it, in Britain or in Europe as a whole. Myself, in Parliament, it's a period of which I'm inordinately proud. Under the leadership of the late Mr. Tony Benn, the greatest Prime Minister we never had, we fought a rearguard action in Parliament against the destruction of Yugoslavia. We failed, like we failed again just a few years later in Iraq. But the world has changed. Nobody can bomb a Chinese embassy now. Nobody can stand up to the new Eurasian development which is taking place on this planet, where most of the people and most of the wealth of the planet resides. We're in a new world. It's just not the new world order that the so-called West, which is, I remind you, just 10% of the world's population, think or thought that it was going to be. Their new world order has been stillborn. A better world order, a more just world order, is in the process of being born. But these are useful reminders of just exactly the nature of the beast that is NATO. We're here in Belgrade and we can say these things without fear of seizure of our assets, without fear of imprisonment. 7 years in prison. If I was to say what I've just said through the mediums that would reach a large number of people, I could end up next door to Julian Assange. Just think.
So as George said, they bombed the Chinese embassy. They bombed, TV station. But it's a defensive organization, I promise. If you just get to know us a little bit better, said the devil. Oh man. Let me show you a tweet by Glenn Greenwald. He said that Kosovo had long been part of Serbia. Now the US and EU view it as independent because the US and NATO sided with ethnic separatists that didn't want to be governed by Belgrade. To end war in Ukraine, why not give those in Donbass and Crimea the same choice with a UN-supervised vote? Whatever one's view on the validity of the Crimea referendum, disputed due to the presence of Russian troops, nobody doubts these regions have many ethnic Russians who identify with Moscow more than Kyiv. Is it a majority? Find out with a vote and use the Kosovo precedent. I love this because it's like, it's really just rubbing the truth in their faces, and it's so funny because as he points out, when people have a vote to become a part of Russia, it's illegitimate, it's this and that, forget the one in Donbass and let's just talk about Crimea, like he said, right, where the situation wasn't as crazy as now. Keep in mind, Crimea has always been majority ethnic Russian, so we're talking about before it was given to Ukraine in, what was it, 1954, I think it was, it's the 1950s. Even though it was all Soviet Union, it was transferred basically from Russia to Ukraine, and then Russia basically, took it back, and they had a referendum. And I mean, I don't know what result you expect to get. It's always going to be majority ethnic Russian, but yeah, they voted to be part of Russia, and it's not viewed as legitimate. So you got people exercising, their right to self-determination, and we say no, this is not okay because of Russian troops. And yet when there's NATO troops present, the vote is completely legitimate and valid and fine and must be respected to the letter, right? As was the case in Kosovo. So it's funny, right? When we go to those countries and bomb them and we give people a referendum, it's okay, but don't, heaven pray, don't let the Russians do it. It's not even comparable, but you understand the analogy, yes? So, you're always going to have problems, unfortunately, and I say that with a very heavy heart. you're always going to have problems in Serbia, in Kosovo, in Yugoslavia because of what NATO did, because of the partitioning. And it's just like you're always going to have problems in Palestine because of what Britain and France did, you know, carving up the Middle East. And this is destruction on a scale that most people cannot even grasp. And they, you know, it's like it's really disgusting to me that you know, we memory hole what happened in Belgrade. And like I said, it sent shivers down my spine. It's like I was watching Shock and Awe, right? Like the Iraq clips. And what's the difference really in the end? It's the same actors doing the same thing. NATO, the defensive alliance. Yeah, okay. You know, I forgot to mention when I was talking about Walid Daqqa that another Palestinian prisoner died, you know, in Israeli detention just a few weeks ago, right? Khudr Adnan was his name. And, you know, he was also, you know, in Israeli prisons for a long time. He had spent about, I think, 8 years, you know, with this administrative detention where he wasn't actually ever charged with anything or convicted of anything, but just brought in and out of prison, never told why. And yeah, he died. And once again, you have this Israeli practice of intentional, so they do it on purpose, intentional medical negligence, where you leave someone to die, you put them in such conditions that they develop diseases or injuries, and then you don't cure them or treat them in any capacity, and then they die. You know, it's really murder by another name. It's murder by another name. And they've done this to Khudr Adnan, they've done this to so many Palestinian prisoners. And Walid Daqqa is, you know, even if they released him now, it's really sad. You know, you have no idea how long he will live, and they don't talk about him in the media. And you know, there's a blackout in the West. Most people won't even know his name because, you know, we can't talk about Israeli crimes. We can't talk about Israeli abuses of human rights. I mean, come on, get real. Do you actually care about human rights, or is it just a badge you like flashing in people's faces to bomb them? You know. Let me show you something else. This is from Latin America. And actually, before I continue, I just saw we got some donations on YouTube, so let me read them to you. And I think we might have received some on PayPal, so just let me check a second. Okay, one moment. Pradesh, it's good to see you again. Pradesh said that, hey Richard, hope you're doing well today. Thank you. Would you say that Australia is kind of used as a battering ram for these wars that Britain and Americans send us in first? I mean, you know, a battering ram is a very good analogy. I think it's a rather accurate description, especially when it comes to China. You know, I mean, before, what you'd have Anzac is basically Australia, New Zealand. You had sorry, I'm just trying to look on PayPal if there's anything. Basically, you know, you always had in World War I and World War II, you would have British forces, meaning Indian, meaning Australian, meaning South Africa, and meaning New Zealand. So really wide range of countries, right? And of course, it's due to colonialism. And the kind of crazy thing is that the French did the same. And you know, you'd have people who had basically fought for France or for Britain, and then, you know, because they're brown or they're black, they're treated like non-citizens and like crap, even though they're veterans and had, you know, literally fought in World War I or World War II, and they're forgotten about. You know, Algerians as well, same thing. You know, it's really disgusting. But in this case, I have a feeling you mean something else, right? In the sense of a battering ram. Well, number one, what I would say is that Australia was actually in the Vietnam War. I don't know if many people know that, but Australia was, just as much involved as the United States was, and the French before them. But that's the Indochina War, as after Dien Bien Phu, they they not only left Vietnam, they fucking ran, or Indochina as they used to call it. Dien Bien Phu was basically a battle where the French military were humiliated is kind of like, making it sound, a bit nicer than it was. They were crushed, completely crushed. Any image of Napoleon or some kind of like glorious French army gone, like flushed down the toilet. And the Americans and Australians would have done well to kind of learn from that. I don't know what Henry Kissinger, since we were discussing him, or any of these people thought they would achieve by going in there, except humiliating defeat. But yeah, so in addition to Vietnam, going back to Australia, with China's the next, the coming one. And I really wish, this weren't true, but they're definitely using Australia as a battering ram. Well done. I'm going to steal that. Or let's say I'm borrowing that from you, Pradesh, and I appreciate the the analogy. But, I also like the one where that's Australia is an unsinkable aircraft carrier. I think that's also good, right? Battering ram fits the purpose very well. So Goran says, after we shot down Invisible 117 and sold parts to China, the quote-unquote peace envoy delivered message from USA that Belgrade will be carpet bombed to oblivion if we don't surrender, and Joe Biden pushed for that. I mean, what George Galloway was saying now, that you wouldn't dare bomb a Chinese embassy today. I really think that that says a lot, right? They would really do well to avoid something like that, because it doesn't mean like it was okay back then, but China's become so powerful now. I mean, they're not even going to dare to do that. I'm astonished that they even tried that on with the Huawei CFO. They kidnapped her in Canada basically and tried like moving her to the United States, and China showed them like we're not messing around. But Joe Biden, as you mentioned, he's one reason I view him let's say not necessarily more dangerous, but like, well, more dangerous definitely than Donald Trump, but just as like nasty is that he's been in government for so long, right? Like with various roles, vice president, senator, it doesn't matter. The guy's been around. He in Washington, just like causing havoc across the world. So that's why he's so dangerous. Whereas well, I'm not going to give Trump any accolades. They're both crap, period. So no need to add anything. And Mahmoud says, great work, Richard and Claudia. Thank you very much. And Mahmoud also added that this ends with Zelensky fleeing Ukraine with his tail between his legs and American tax dollars sticking out of his suitcase. It's funny you mentioned Zelensky, because when the Panama Papers came out, he was like on the front page of one of the editions. I don't know if many people remember that, but he, like, right now Zelensky's a darling, and he's like this brave warrior, and he's always in combat, so he can't put on a suit like a normal person. He has to go around in these like combat fatigues. I'm kind of giving him shit, because if I were him, I'd also wear the combat fatigues. They're more comfortable, man. Why the fuck would you put on a suit? A suit is like it's just no need for it, man. If you can get away with the combat fatigues, go for it. Besides, he's the commander-in-chief, right? So might as well wear the uniform. But my point is that he plays this role, right? Like he's such a brave warrior and all this stuff, and it's kind of like they're whitewashing his image again, so and repackaging him for Western consumption, right, in the media. So Zelensky is no longer this tax thief in the Panama Papers. No, he's a chivalrous, brave, driven leader who is determined to get the Russian, to get Ivan, right, as we would call them, Ivan, out of his territory, right? Oh man, they're funny. They're really funny. So thank you guys very much for the super chats and for the donations. I really appreciate it, and thanks for supporting the show. We've got another sticker here. This is from Rulabel. Thank you, Rule. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. Rule Bull. You guys have to forgive me because it's scrolling up too fast, so I miss a few letters. But yeah, if you'd like to support the show, if you enjoy my work and you want to support independent media, you can donate on PayPal or Cash App or Venmo. You can send Bitcoin or any wide array of cryptocurrencies, which I don't really know how to use yet, but we'll find out. And yeah, there's also super chats here and on Patreon. Anyway, I'm not too much in the mood of doing an ad for this channel. I kind of just want to talk about the stuff. So you'll forgive me if I fall short on that front. Okay, so this is in regards to Latin America. Let's talk about Latin America or South America. Give me a second. Okay. So, Lula has just received Maduro. Okay, and this is very big because when Bolsonaro was president of Brazil, he had basically made Nicolas Maduro, who's the Venezuelan president, he had made Maduro persona non grata, right? So basically, he blacklisted him. And now it's nice to see that Venezuela and Brazil, are mending ties and they have someone more reasonable in charge, to put it mildly. So here's Lula with Maduro at a press conference, and let's take a look at what they had to say.
Você tem clareza que o preconceito contra a Venezuela é muito grande. Você tem preconceito de quantas.
I just realized I have no idea what they're saying because I do not speak Portuguese and there are no subtitles, so that's not going to fly. Can anyone interpret? Well, I can tell it's friendly. Let's put it that way, okay? I mean, the fact he's in the country is like already good, right? So before he would have been blackballed. So the thing I actually know what Lula said. I read the transcript. I just thought that they'd have captions here, subtitles. So basically, he talked about how bad U.S. sanctions. I'm still laughing at this. He talked about how bad U.S. sanctions have been, still are, for Venezuela's country, and this is obviously, I mean, sanctions I've covered in depth, and I've been covering it for years now, basically. So yeah, sanctions are very, very bad. I've likened it to worse than dropping a bomb. Really, I think it's people don't understand that it's just like siege warfare. In the Middle Ages, when you would attack a city or a fortress, if you couldn't get in militarily, you would resort to starving the populace, which is a very it's a very disgusting act of war, because that's what it is. Yep, you would starve the people of the city to death. That is what sanctions are today. It's the sanctions are the equivalent of that. That's it. Sanctions are the modern equivalent of starving a city to death, of putting a city under siege. That's it. So Venezuela is one of the targets of U.S. sanctions. They started piling them on Venezuela with the Bush administration. And it's kind of weird because Venezuela used to be one of the top suppliers of oil to the United States, right? I think their fourth source of oil under Bush was Venezuela at the time. And so it becomes less and less and less as they sanction Venezuela more and more. And, Bush put sanctions on them, and then Obama put more sanctions, and then Trump even more sanctions, and then Biden comes in and just keeps them. He keeps all the sanctions because he likes starving people to death in Venezuela. Yes, that's what it is. I spoke with I'm not sure if I've uploaded it yet, which it was on my television show. Basically, I spoke to the UN rapporteur for sanctions, okay? and she visited Venezuela. She went there and she went to Syria, and her job is literally to look at what sanctions do. And when I interviewed her, you know, she said that the people who were in school didn't even have pencils. And I know it sounds like it sounds like such a classic example of, oh no, the poor children, they don't even have books to write on. No, it's like literally true. That's actually the case. They literally don't even have equipment at school. There's people, you know, when it comes to the elections, they were saying, for example, during the legislative elections, so back in 2020, yeah, so just a few years ago in the legislatives, they were saying that, oh, you can't consider this legitimate because people didn't turn out. The turnout was low. Yeah, you know why? Because people literally don't have fuel to put in their cars so they can go to vote. So obviously the turnout was low. Yes, well done. They didn't tell you that first part, right? The American media say, oh, Venezuelan turnout was low, the vote is illegitimate. Why was the turnout low, Karen? Tell us why. Why? Is it because people didn't want to vote, or because they didn't have fuel in the car? Okay. So you see how dirty they are in the media? That's how they work. This is our press in the West. This is what they do. So in any case, they put more and more sanctions on them, and you know, she told me about how scarce the food and water situation was, and you know, now that Lula is president next door, you know, Venezuela and Brazil share a border with each other, right? So this is very, very good. Brazil is a BRICS economy. It's, you know, one of the emerging economies. It's very, very important to have Brazil as a trading partner, as an economic partner, and to have good diplomatic relations with Brazil if you are in Latin America, especially if you're in Latin America. And so, you know, having good ties with your neighbor, this is great. Here, let me show you the clip. Here's the translated one, okay? Now you can get to hear from Lula.
En todos los foros multilaterales, nosotros hemos llevado la propuesta de que como región se solicite al gobierno de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica el levantamiento de todas las sanciones y de todas las medidas coercitivas unilaterales contra Venezuela.
Right, see, that's what they call it. It's a unilateral coercive measure. In other words, it's bullying. That's what it is. Unilateral doesn't mean that everybody agreed to it, like universal. It means that it's one person deciding by themselves, meaning the United States. He should have added the illegal unilateral coercive measures, which is, you know, the more accurate definition, because they're illegal. Obviously, I'm giving him crap. You know, I'm being picky is my point. You know, Maduro describes sanctions perfectly. They're unilateral coercive measures. They're meant to bully and strong arm other countries by starving them, you know. So I just wanted to add the fact that they're illegal under international law, because now suddenly people, they care about international law so much when it comes to Ukraine. What about Syria and Venezuela? What about all the countries that have been sanctioned? What about Iran? They also should have their rights respected and their territories respected, and their, you know, right to self-determination respected. Why are they still under sanctions? That's also a form of warfare.
Y contra los países que sufren en nuestra América ese tipo de sanciones.
Culpa dele não, é culpa dos Estados Unidos, que fez bloqueio extremamente exagerado. Eu sempre acho que o bloqueio é pior do que...
Thank you. Thank you. That is literally what I have been saying for the past 10 minutes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
A guerra. Porque a guerra normalmente morre soldado que está em batalha. Mas o bloqueio mata criança, mata mulheres, mata pessoas que não têm nada a ver com a disputa ideológica que está em jogo. Então, eu sonho com a moeda diferente do dólar, para que a gente possa negociar, sabe, com os nossos países fornecedores de produtos e os países que compram de nós.
Me too. I don't know how to say it in Portuguese, but I dream of that as well. You know, it's de-dollarization. This is a big topic, and you know, people have talked about this for a long time, but now that BRICS is you know, set to grow, and they're gonna have this big summit in August. I mean, I don't know if that's gonna happen. I doubt it, but at some point in the future, you'll have BRICS probably announcing a new currency, right? I showed you a few months ago, Brazil and Argentina are gonna develop a new currency just for trade between themselves. So that's still very big thing. Perhaps not on the same scale as BRICS itself, but still. Argentina is a country that actually wants to join BRICS. Iran, Saudi Arabia. I mean, you got over 20 countries that want to join BRICS at the moment, and you can think of it as a rival to the G7. But I think when you say that, it kind of cheapens it or lessens it. The G7 is nothing. The G7. What do the G7 produce? They have no minerals. They produce literally nothing whatsoever. The real powerhouses, economic powerhouses of the planet are these countries. They're Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and Iran and Saudi Arabia. So they actually have resources, minerals, production. Their currency is actually worth something. Whereas you look at the G7 and especially the United States, all they do is print currency. They just print money, print. That's a currency that's based on thin air, on nothing. It's worthless, right? And it's not only that it's worthless. We're not here sitting, your currency is so stupid. That's not the point. The point is they're using that currency to murder people. They're using the dollar against other countries because it's so common and it's the global reserve currency. That means that you can say, oh well, I don't like you. I forbid you and anybody dealing with you to use the dollar, to use American banks, to have any currency or any economic activity flowing through our borders or using our currency. So now the fact that other countries and half the world is using your currency, you can leverage that against smaller nations and just torture them to death with it, right? Because the United States, if they say, for example, Venezuela, you're under sanctions or under blockade, as they put it. That means that anybody who trades with Venezuela will also be punished. Okay, and that's how sanctions work. They basically isolate you by putting a label on you, and because people are afraid of upsetting Uncle Sam and not being able to buy and sell things using the dollar primarily, then they will just cease to trade entirely with whatever country it is, whether it's Venezuela or it's Syria or Iran and so on. And then those economies and countries get crushed and their people suffer and they starve and they can't have medicine and so on. Right? So it's a really, really terrible domino effect. It's completely outrageous.
Produtos e os países que compram de nós. É efetivamente inexplicável país ter 900 sanções porque o outro país não gosta dele. É inexplicável. Então eu acho que está nas suas mãos, companheiro, construir a sua narrativa e virar esse jogo para que a gente possa vencer definitivamente e a Venezuela voltar a ser país soberano.
Yeah, what that dude said. No, seriously, these are not really huge demands. No one is asking for the moon here. This is, once again, you hear these words pop up: sovereignty, territorial integrity. Okay, that's great, but what about Venezuela? Syria? Can they also have these things? Why are they being bullied like that? That's just it's so disproportionate. It's so disproportionate, So if the BRICS make their own currency, this is something that's actually backed by real economic activity and resources and minerals, and not something that's based on thin air and just printed at will. And once again, this is why they killed Gaddafi. I mean, he basically envisioned an African currency. He wanted to call it golden dinar, and it was backed by gold, tons of gold, that he had. And obviously the point was that it's backed not just by his gold, but that there's, all the African countries buy and sell in that currency exclusively, because, that's how the dollar gets some of its prestige, is that most of the world use it as their reserve currency, and they also buy and sell in the dollar. So, it brings the high dollar, the high dollar. It brings the dollar into high demand. The high dollar, God. So yeah, that would do the same thing if you had an African currency, you know, which is based on African resources and African economic activity. I mean, Africa is the richest continent on the planet. Like, I mean, you can't even contend with such a with the you know, the richness that they have. So, you know, when Gaddafi was saying, let's make our own currency and let's get rid of this French crap and this American crap that is controlling us. Let's make our own currency that we control, that is backed by our resources. You know, that's something that's going to rival the dollar, and that's why and the franc, the you know, the CFA franc, which is France's like colonial money. It's still using it in Africa. So that would get rid of it entirely and rival you know, French and American control of Africa. So they killed him for it. They you know, they're going to tell you, oh, he's a dictator, blah blah blah. Yeah, everybody they don't like is a dictator. This is boring. We're tired of this. Yawn. You know, they killed him because of that. That's why they killed him. They didn't like him funding you know, anti-colonial revolutionaries, and they didn't like him proposing this currency. So if the BRICS countries do the same thing, I mean, it's something on an unimaginable level, you know. And I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow morning. I think it's going to take a lot of time. But this is the system that the United States, this is a system, excuse me, that the United States is afraid of, right? This is why there's a coming war with China. This is why they don't like Russia. This is why they're strong arming South Africa now. Oh, you're arming the Russians. Oh, you won't arrest Putin. Oh, you don't respect the ICC. You know, they really, really hate the multipolar world. They don't want a multipolar world. They want a hegemon, you know, one hyperpower that controls the planet. That's what they want. You know, I mean, I don't think I would necessarily want that same thing if I were in their shoes, but, you know, just figuratively speaking, perhaps people with that amount of power in their shoes would also want the same thing. I don't know. I like to think most people are, you know, nice and kind and have morals, but in any case, they are certainly driven, the tiny group of people in Washington. Yeah. So whoever, you know, I obviously whoever, it's the presidents and their cabinets, whoever is planning for this thing, you better hurry up, you know. And I think the war in Ukraine has it's regenerated a lot of interest in BRICS, because it's viewed as you know, the United States kind of digging its teeth into Russia, and, you know, firmly saying the old system must stay. And, you know, you're going to have friction, right? You're going to have friction because Russia is saying, no, actually, we're going to turn east. We're going to turn to China. We'll sell them our oil. We'll sell to India. You know, we're going to repurpose all of our facilities, and we're going to direct our economic activity to the east. You have these countries like, you know, basically reeling from centuries of colonialism, and, you know, it's about time. It's about time. It's good to see that. How long we've been going? 3 hours? Not bad. I mean, we can do better, but, you know. I'm kidding. Thank you guys very much for all your donations, and for whoever joins on Patreon, I will play you a crab dance, and if you join on YouTube, you'll get these weird emojis. Thank you to Alec Martin for joining, and to Hillary Rodham Clinton. Apparently Hillary likes my show. I'm gonna play a crab dance for you guys. Thank you very much. Here you go, and thanks to everyone who's supporting the show on patreon.com. It's basically, you know, you can donate monthly, like £1 or £2 or $3 or €3, whatever you want. You better start paying me in this BRICS currency whenever it comes. All right. De-dollarization. No, but seriously, thank you guys very much. And thank you for supporting the show. Here's your
Why you texting? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Lovely. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, everybody, for supporting the show. And I see Sophia's spirit is in the chat. You see, she stands out. She sticks out because she's got her lovely green name for being a member and a picture of my face next to her name as well. Okay, so thank you very much for supporting the show. I see we've got more donations on, I think it's YouTube. So let me check that. Yes, this is from Marvin. Marvin, good to see you. Marvin says, thanks, Richard. Appreciate your work and commentary. Well, thank you. I'm very happy to see you again, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you to Joseph G. And to Mahmoud and Jows. I'm just kind of reading through the chat here, and thank you to Basil. Basil says, "Let's go, Brandon." I mean, I don't understand this meme, because I know it's a song and everything. It's just phonetically, it doesn't sound like, you know, fuck Joe Biden. I don't know. Let's go, Brandon. No matter how many times I say it, it just won't come out right. And I don't know. Perhaps I'm doing it wrong. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you. Eric says, I thought it was Russian propaganda. Yeah, you know, Putin is, or Putin, as some people like to say, Putin is standing just over there whispering in my ear in Russian. Yeah, you know. Jesus Christ. You know, I really got to laugh because these quote-unquote academics who like make these lists up, you know, I can just print a list out of my ass of, like, you know, what should we say? I mean, American propaganda sounds a bit boring. We need something more exciting. But, you know, they just make these lists up, you know, and they say, like, well, this person is tweeting with the wrong vocabulary. I fear they might be a Russian spy. Boy, yes, got to root the Ivan out. Yes. To root them out like ferrets. I'm just reading your comments. That's it. Istvan, did I say that correctly? Says, the funny thing is that everyone knows what it means, but some Karens don't. You're talking about Let's Go Brandon, right? Jabber says, or say it rather the Ray McGovern way. Putiny. Straight from the Putin playbook. Yes. Gunny says, ferrets are not to be underestimated. Quite right, oh boy. Yes. Well, guys, I'm too tired to beg you for money, so please just, you know, donate if you can. No, but seriously, did we leave anything out? I think we covered it all, which, you know, said no one ever in politics. You know, literally every minute there's some fart happening or you know, someone doing something. Humanity says, I love when Richie does posh English. Don't think I've heard him do a West End. Ah, well. West End, for those of you who don't know, is the rich area in London, right? So, I mean, yeah, basically is posh English, isn't it? Marvin, thank you for the donation. Marvin says, well, I don't know if you're doing it the American way or the English way, but 6th of July, I know it's 1963. USS Liberty was attacked by the Israelis. Have survivors on? I would like to. That's actually a brilliant idea. Okay. Let me get on it, okay? Let me get on that, and I'll try and find. That must be some really crappy experience, but you know, I don't think most people know that, because it's like these two things where the Israelis they attacked the USS Liberty, like you just mentioned, and then there's also the King David Hotel bombing. It's always a mouthful. The King David Hotel bombing, which is basically it's a hotel that was used as you know, headquarters the British Army, and you know, this is when Palestine was a British mandate, and they blew it up. Yeah, it's funny because the Israelis, they still somehow receive support from the US and the UK, and it's insane to me. You know, it's like if their if their atrocities against the Palestinians weren't enough, you know, why wouldn't you rescind support just based on the fact that the Israelis have attacked an American ship, and they've killed dozens of British officers? You know, at least if you don't care about the Palestinians, at least care about that, right? Maybe this gets through to some people. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not going to care about the Palestinians and how the Israelis treat them, then maybe you would care about how the Israelis treat Americans and British. Well, propaganda is very effective. That's why, you know, most people live in La La Land. You can quote me on that. Propaganda is very effective, and that's why most people live in La La Land. It's true. Again, thank you guys very much for supporting the show, and I apologize if you sent something on PayPal and it didn't go through, because I'm trying to get through, and it's just turning and not loading. In any case, I just want to say thank you to everybody supporting the show. Yeah, you know, I'm doing every 2 or 3 days now, right? We're back on schedule every 2 or 3 days. Expect the live stream, and if you're not getting a notification, please hit the thing that looks like a bell. There's a bell somewhere on your screen, and it just means that you get a notification. They call it the bell icon. I say somewhere on your screen because I don't know if you guys are watching on mobile or you know, if you're watching on your computers. It doesn't matter. And the second thing that I would offer you is an email notification when I go live. So that means that, you know, instead of through the YouTube app, you get one by email. I don't know, some people prefer that. So here's the address. It's RichardMedhurst.substack.com. Let me just pull that up on the screen. Thank you again, Marvin and Paul, for the donations. You guys are very kind. Let me just pull this up on the screen. So it's just a simple field. You just put it in, type your email in, and then hit subscribe. That's it. It couldn't be simpler. So we've got over 2,000 of you who are subscribed. And just another thing, heads up, if you would like to watch on another website, okay, so either, you know, aside from YouTube, there's Rockfin, Rumble, and Odyssey. So I'm streaming now on all of them, and all my videos are uploaded. So that way we have a backup, okay? That's the point of it. So we have a backup. And Claudia is very kind. She's put all the links in the description, in the chat, I should say, right now. So thank you very much. Sophia says, I do both because sometimes YouTube is late. And she's supporting the show monthly. Sophia is an absolute G. Thank you very much. And yeah, I've heard the same thing, that sometimes YouTube sends a late notification. So the email will definitely be faster. That's very astute and kind of you, Sophia. So thank you very much. Okay, great. Here, let me pull it up on the screen again. So that's RichardMedhurst.substack.com, and Claudia has just put all the links in the chat. So yeah, thank you guys very much. I'm very grateful for all of you tuning in, and I hope you'll be here in 2 days. You know, 2 or 3 days, whenever I stream again. And if you want to make sure you get a notification, as I said, YouTube or Substack. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Take care. Ma'asalam, and bye-bye. Sweden wanted to join NATO. They broke with their decades-long neutral stance. Turkey was one of the only countries, I think, along with Hungary, that was saying, we're not going to let you in, because you need to have consensus, right? You need all the members in NATO to say, okay, you can join. their bid has kind of been in limbo because Turkey wanted to, extract several concessions. It was very clear that they really want to join NATO and Sweden, and they were doing everything they could to appease the Turks. And then this moron comes in front of the Turkish embassy and burns the Quran. I understand that in their point of view, this is freedom of expression, and you're in Sweden, you can do whatever you like. But you have to remember that if you're trying to get Turkey support, maybe wait until after you've gotten it. I mean, this is just dumb from a diplomatic level. They're doing everything to appease Turkey, and then because of one idiot, they let this go to waste. The Germans and the Americans have decided that it would be a good idea to send Ukraine tanks. German tanks against the Russian. Man, I'm perplexed by this. What do they think is going to happen? Because even if you can train the Ukrainian crews who are used to Soviet tanks to operate British tanks, and then you got to train them to operate German tanks, and then you got to train them to operate American tanks, and that's if they can even maintain the logistical supply line to work with these tanks, to keep them running. What kind of door are you opening now for the Russians to do? I mean, this is very clearly escalation. While Germany and the US are saying, yeah, we're going to give Ukraine tanks, the doomsday clock has been moved to 90 seconds to midnight. So this is basically, it's a measurement of how close we are to the end of the world, to the apocalypse, to annihilating the planet with nuclear weapons, right? And this is the closest it's ever been to midnight, okay? Midnight representing the end. Ukraine's most senior military commander has said that his forces need about 300 Western tanks. Over the last year, NATO allies in Eastern Europe supplied Ukraine with Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks that have been ground down or destroyed in constant fighting. Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks. Now, Ukraine, having been a Soviet satellite state and part of the Soviet Union, it was part of Russia, all of its military personnel being trained on Russian tanks. What do you think they're going to do with American tanks or German tanks, which they are not trained to operate? The Ukrainians know how to operate Russian tanks. That's all they know how to operate. The Ukrainians only use Soviet stuff, right? Until the last couple of years and until now. This is the first major influx of NATO weapons. And again, NATO has been training Ukrainian forces, but Challenger tanks, this is brand new. If they can't even use the tanks that they're trained to use, what makes you so confident they're going to know how to use a Leopard 2 or an M1A2 or a Challenger 2? Man, people train on those things for fucking months and years. Both of these home secretaries, okay, Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, both their parents came to the United Kingdom, and under their own laws as home secretary, they themselves would not have been able to come to the UK, to be born in the UK, and to have a life there. So the hypocrisy is so disgusting, I got what I wanted, I'm okay, I'm secure, I can live in the UK, I'm the home secretary now I'm gonna shut the gates. Now I'm going to screw people that have literally nothing, that are so desperate they're, risking drowning in the Channel or the Mediterranean Sea. People have to resort to risking drowning. They have to resort to, hiding in trucks or swimming across the Channel, if everyone's ever done that, crossing the Channel because of her policies, because she forces people into doing that, right? So you literally have no choice. You have to be in the UK to begin the application. What are people supposed to do? Just teleport, for 5 minutes, write down the form and just get out of the UK? This is ridiculous. She's a liar, just like the one, her predecessor, Priti Patel. Why is Germany reluctant to give the Ukrainians tanks? That's a really tough one. I wonder why. Germany has long refused to send its most potent weapons to countries in conflict, a byproduct of its legacy of starting World War II and World War I. That's horse manure, because Germany does send weapons to countries in war. Saudi Arabia is one of them. So to get around this, the trick that they use is they don't sell the tanks and the ordnance directly to Saudi Arabia. They move it to Italy, and then from Italy they sell it to the Saudis. So they basically just insert a middleman, and that's how they get around this very, honorable principle of theirs, which they never abide by. If you go and you look up the Yemen war, you're going to see weapons from fucking everywhere. The Canadians have been selling weapons and making money. Britain, the US, Australia, everyone. And the Germans are no exception. So this is, the idea is true, but they fucking send weapons. They goddamn do. They do. Do you see how they move like snakes? Do you see how they move like snakes? They get the media to whisper in your ear, "Oh, don't go on strike. No, don't strike. It'll cripple the economy." Oh. No, it's not, like giving the army 800 billion to fucking bomb, 20 countries. That's okay. That money, we can spare that. But if you go on strike where, oh my God, we're going to lose like $2 billion a day, well, we can't afford that. You know the Pentagon has been audited, I think 5 times now, and every single audit was failed. That means they don't know where the money's going. The Pentagon is like a black fucking hole that sucks trillions of dollars, and the government doesn't even know where the money's going. I can tell you where it's going. You don't need to audit the Pentagon. I can tell you, me, Richard Medhurst, that money is going towards drug deals, towards arms sales, towards arms purchases, towards CIA fucking budgets and embassy coffee. That's where that shit is going, man. That shit is going to the spooks. That shit's going to the bombers. That shit's going to the paramilitaries. That's where it's going. You don't need to scratch your head. That's where it's going. And apparently that's an acceptable loss. That's an acceptable use of American dollars and taxpayer dollars. But, you know, going on strike, oh, that's too much of an inconvenience. That's the fucking point, man.